We are live, and we're waiting for Wilson to show up again. He just had to restart his computer to get rid of some interference. So Paulo and I are here talking movies and roller skating. What is it? Roller hockey? There we go.
Roller hockey. It's the Roller Hockey World Cup, which is being held in Argentina. We are now in the quarterfinals, and we are playing France. We just scored our first goal. In the first stage we beat France by what, 5-2 or 5-1 or 5-2. We tied Italy 2-2, and we demolished Chile 7-1.
Now, are you allowed to use roller blades, or are they just too unstable for roller hockey?
They're unstable. I remember a World Cup many years ago. The Russians showed up in rollerblades. They got their asses kicked by Spain on their first match, 61-0, and then by us 45-1 on the second one. So they were getting better. The thing is, if you get to 10 goals on a roller hockey game, that's too much. Right. So 61 in 45.
That's absurd.
Yeah. And then finally somebody lent them some actual roller skates. Yeah, because roller blades they don't cut it. You need the balance provided by the roller skates.
There's a famous football game, American football, that's I don't know, 80 years old now, called the Sneakers game, where it took I don't know if it was the 20s, the 30s. But I think my New York Giants were playing against someone for the championship, and the field was so frozen and icy that they were all skating around on their cleats.
Why did they play the game?
At halftime, what was that?
Why did they play the game?
Because you play football in all weather. That's why.
Okay.
So somebody at halftime for the Giants went to a local high school and got a whole bunch of sneakers and brought them back. And then they managed to win they kicked the other team's butt because they were wearing sneakers and not cleats. And this was the day and age where you couldn't find, football wasn't that big of a professional game. So all they had was cleat, and you couldn't even find, sneakers weren't a common thing even in those days.
Okay. Well, in soccer, you play all weather, but if the field is unusable, they interrupt the game.
The only time you stop a football game is with lightning. Otherwise, you play through.
Yeah,
you play in snow. There's not much mud left anymore, but they used to play in mud. Well,
the main reason you can use to interrupt a soccer match is fog, because if you can't see the field from goal to goal, then the conditions are not ideal. They play when the field is drenched. Although everybody's just falling down. But if there's fog and you can't see from goal to goal, they interrupt the match.
There's a very famous game called the Fog Bowl. In the 80s, it was a Bears-Eagles playoff game in Soldier Field in Chicago. And fog rolled in and covered the whole field. And they had to use handheld cameras on the sideline to be able to capture anything. And the game still went on. They still played the game, even though it's like you couldn't see your wide receivers. So everything took place around the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, in that situation in soccer, they would interrupt the game.
And they kept going. They're like, whatever, let's keep playing. Now it's a famous game, the Fog Bowl.
It wasn't until about less than 5 years ago that we finally have instant replays for the referees. Because we were all about the purity of the game. Whatever they saw at the time, that was it.
Yeah. That doesn't work when 1 million fans can see.
Yeah. Well, we do have 1 million fans seeing. The thing is, soccer doesn't stop the clock when there's something that you need to review.
Right.
So we can afford to have a 90-minute game go on for 4 hours.
Like I said, the reason baseball finally adapted instant replay is, more people are watching it on TV, of course, then, because baseball was another one of these purity of the game situations. But, when all the people at TV know the exact call because they can see it, we have the technology.
Yeah.
And, the people on the field get it wrong. That is not a good look.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing that we had in soccer. The referee could not see something. We all saw the instant replays.
Yeah.
And then there would be a 2-hour TV show where insiders would debate the.
Look, Darren is with us tonight. How are you doing, Darren?
Hey, guys.
Hey, Darren. How's it going? Welcome.
Sorry to interrupt.
I am explaining European sports.
Yeah, we're talking. We're way off topic.
Yeah, right now. I am watching a game from the Roller Hockey World Cup quarterfinals. It's Portugal playing France. We're now winning 1-0. But the roller hockey is something that only matters in 4 countries, which is Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Argentina.
I tell you, man, the amount of knowledge, don't know you well, but the amount of knowledge you have across so many
various subjects.
from when I was on a couple of weeks ago, just your comic knowledge is astounding. I think, as a compliment.
Friday, 62 Lefty Blues.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of comic knowledge. That's for sure.
Yeah, when I like something, I like something.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Reasons it.
Yeah, I was just watching the Gray Man now as a new show on his channel, and one of his American friends managed to score a couple of guests, and they had J.M. DeMatteis on the latest one, and it's just a shame that I couldn't watch it live because I would be on the chat asking questions, but that reminded me because J.M. DeMatteis' Captain America was my first American superhero comic. When I was 6, it was in the Brazilian Captain America number 69. And it was the first appearance of Vermin. I had no idea what first appearances meant at the time, but
Mike Zeck drew those, right?
Mike Zeck drew those. And seeing Mike Zeck art when you're 6, that blows your mind.
Oh, so you jumped on that's during Kraven's Last Hunt, during the
No, this
is before that.
It was Captain America.
Oh, before. Oh, that's right. Then that character.
He was later on.
Yeah.
Berman, yeah.
So, and I wanted to know stuff because at 6, you read everything.
Yeah.
Including the ads. So and those had credits, the Disney stories that I was reading since I was 4, they didn't. And so I wanted to know who these guys were, and then I ended up recognizing art pretty early. Mike Zeck was one, John Byrne was another one, George Perez.
I have to bring these over and show you because these two right here, Steranko's History of Comics, was the greatest thing to me when I was a kid, because I don't know if you've ever seen these before, but my local library had them. And I took them out a few times because the first one, you have to picture, 1977. There was just not much to find.
There was no real information back then. I would have loved to have found that in the library.
Yeah, it was either those or Jules Pfeiffer's book.
Yeah. I always heard about Jules Pfeiffer's book. I still haven't read it. His is what, all in color for a dime, right? Or is
I don't think I even know that book.
Heroes.
The comic book heroes.
Okay.
I think you can find the comic book if you search the scan sites. You can find comic book heroes, but not all in color for a dime.
Yeah, those were the 2 that I read about as a kid that I never read. But these 2 were great because this one has the history of the Golden Age in it, and it's just terrific. This is where I learned all about the Golden Age. Because I couldn't read any of that stuff, and this one has the Silver Age stuff in it, and it was just terrific. It's got some good, it's got some stuff in the 50s too. So golden, silver, but these were the greatest things to me as a kid. When I finally, there must have been a warehouse find in the 90s because all of a sudden copies of these came out in the early 70s, And besides my local library, I never saw them anywhere. Mm-hmm. And then in the 90s, one of my local comic shops got a bunch of copies in. And he didn't even know where they came from. I was like, well, what's the price on these? Because I knew they came from the early 70s.
Right.
And one is $4, the other is $6. He's like, he's looking on his order sheet. They're not on his order sheet. He's like, I guess I'll give them to you for cover price. So I got them for early 70s cover price in the early 90s.
Well, I have a question for you guys. I was thinking about this the other day. Can you identify the first time you saw a superhero? I was thinking about this for myself, and I really think it probably was me watching Super Friends on Saturday morning.
Nope.
I do not remember it because for me, it's always been there in some form or fashion. Like comic books, I cannot tell you my first comic book I ever read or saw because my cousins had them. So I had to be introduced to them from there. I had Amigo Lizard. No idea where I got it from. And I had Amigo Lizard before I knew of Spider-Man. So there were toys available. Batman, the television show, was always there. So Spider-Man's on the Electric Company. I would assume
that's a good call, the Spider-Man Electric Company, yeah.
So I would assume television is probably where I noticed a hero. But
we had binders. There was a binder that you could buy when I was a kid, and it had a Herb Trimpe Hulk cover on it. And that's probably the first time I saw a superhero, because I was going to school. I probably had seen the superhero comics, but I didn't pay attention. And I know that the Captain America show was on TV, but I didn't watch it because for some strange reason, it was at 8 p.m. on RTP2. So at that time, I would not be able to watch it. It was not showing with the regular cartoon shows. So I only watched it a few years. I only watched the Captain America cartoon a few years later. But we had those binders and with comic book covers, and that's probably the first time I saw superheroes. Yeah. I remember when I decided to buy a superhero comic, I had to annoy my dad into buying it for me. Because I don't think he liked the idea very much. The Disney characters, he was aware that they existed, but the superheroes probably looked scary to him. And I can understand, because that specific comic that I bought, they didn't use the regular Captain America cover. They took an image from inside the comic and used it as a cover, and it's Vermin ripping into Captain America's costume to rip his guts out.
And yes, that was the Steranko Mag comic rack. That just reminded me, talking about our first comics, our first Superhero Friends cartoon, or possibly Wonder Woman, Hulk, or Spider-Man. Yeah, I don't even know the first time I saw a superhero, but I know when I started collecting comics when I was 9. I always tell this story. I had Hulk 200, and my neighbor had 201, 202, and 203. That's when I first realized they all went in a row and made a big story. So I traded him like all the comics I had for those 4 comics. So I obviously had comics, but they were just kind of part of the landscape. But here's a first comic story. This is one of the comics I got this week. Orc Island, one of the ones I worked on from Bad Idea, and I have new neighbors who come over sometimes. There's new neighbors. I have 3 little girls. I think one's 2, one's around 8, one's around 10. I mean, they're little girls. So the middle little girl, I think is around 8, was like, "Oh, can I see some of the comics you make?" I was like, "Sure." And the Orc Island really isn't for kids; it's fairly adult. So I was like, "Sure." See, my name's in the back of this one. Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, cool." And she's like, "Can I read it?" I'm like, "Okay." So she starts reading it out loud, and like this issue is about. I think at one point the one character says "shit." But then it's all about like this issue takes place where the lead character is this teenage girl who's, I guess she's teenage 20, who knows, who's like the captain of this ship, and they're being attacked by this flying monsters, and like no one in this is really heroic, so she's just like, come on, and she's like killing people with knives. And she's reading this out loud. I'm like, oh, that's and at one point, and she's kind of acting it out too. And at one point, like the lead woman, she's got like a magic user guy who had to use this magic spell to get them to this place. So now he's all kind of drained and just dizzy and whatever. So she just starts yelling at him to get with it, the lead character. So my neighbor, the little girl, starts reading the dialogue and yelling along with it. And later she's like, oh, that was so cool. My favorite part was when she was yelling at that guy. She's like, I want to read the rest of it when I come back. I'm like, okay. So when your first comic is Orc Island #2 when you're 8. It's a little violent and spicy.
The Steranko books, I remember hearing a legend that there were 2 other issues, but he never published them.
I know he was supposed to do at least one other volume, but I don't know if it ever got finished.
Volume 3 was never published.
Right, I know it was never published, but I don't even know if it was finished.
Okay, because I remember they're saying that there was supposed to be 4 altogether. Yeah. And at least one of them should have been done. Right. Like, but I never got to actually go through them.
I haven't read them in years, but I read them over when I was a kid, because it was, they told you all about the golden age in the comic, in comics I never heard of before. First time I heard of Plastic Man, and first time I heard of Golden Age Captain America. He was, Golden Age Submariner, Golden Age Human Torch.
I didn't even know the Human Torch existed back.
Yeah.
And the Vision and all that stuff. I had no idea that was reimagined.
I learned of all that stuff from, the Steranko History of Comics. And the other ones I had were the Smithsonian Book of Comics. That one was in the library too. And most people could find that one when we were kids.
But the Smithsonian is about strips, right?
And there's the Smithsonian Book of Comics strips, and this is Smithsonian Book of Comics. The Smithsonian Book of Comics has a lot of
Hey, we're getting famous because of Sex Box.
Thank God. It's about time.
Uh-huh.
The Smithsonian Books of Comics, that was first time I read Captain Marvel. It had, Golden Age Superman and Batman and current Batman and Superman, which were like from the 60s or something. I think they updated it one time in the late 70s or something like that. But
the first book I ever got about the history of comics was probably around 87, 88. That was the Ron Goulart Great History of Comic Books. He's done a lot of journalistic, if you will, books about comics. But that's the one that I think was well known.
Maybe Space Ghost reruns. That could have been, They said I can't think of my first. I think they were kind of I remember when my first collecting comics, but not even my first comics.
I definitely saw animation before I saw live action. The reason I know this is because in the probably I'm going to pinpoint it 78-ish, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I was flipping the channels. I caught the tail end of a Batman Adam West episode. I even remember the episode. And I'd never seen a live action superhero before. Yeah. This was before the Christopher Reeve Superman movie came out. And so I was astonished, and I was so upset they only caught the last minute of it that I begged my mom to call Channel 11 or whoever it was to rerun it, because somehow I knew in my head that they had the ability to run something on television. But maybe it was the first time I ever saw Batman live action. Maybe I'd seen Linda Carter, Wonder Woman, but I'd never seen. That was the first time I saw Batman, an actual guy running around in costume. And I was amazed.
Nothing made an impact on me like the comic books did. That's why I don't remember TV. To this day, comics are still my favorite medium. I have movies, toys, TV shows didn't have the same impact on me that comics did. So I'm sure I must have seen superheroes.
I know I watched everything that was on television at some point or another. Batman was in reruns by the time I was watching it as a kid.
Right.
Same thing with Wonder Woman. Hulk was probably, I watched it live at the time. Same thing with Spider-Man.
Right.
But I'm sure. I mean, a lot of that kind of melds together after so many years that I know I must have seen cartoon superheroes first, then the live actions before I discovered. No, because then again, it's around the same time. Comic books were already out. But it wasn't like a conscious thing to buy comics. I wasn't buying comics, but they were just all over the place. And then it would have to be 83 is when I was like collecting comics. It is basically that time. But I know at least from 75 and up, I was aware of everything. Or aware of things, not everything. So I was aware of the cartoons because I remember watching the Hanna-Barbera superhero stuff. The so you had Hercules, Herculoids, you had those superheroes, but they also did, not only was the Super Friends, but Teen Titans had a cartoon show, the Flash had a cartoon show, a lot of the DC stuff had individual character shows that were outside of the Super Friends stuff. The Marvel stuff was on reruns eventually.
And starting when I was in the first grade, there was a rule. I was mostly an outside kid. And we started a rule in my house too. We weren't allowed to turn on the TV until 7 p.m. So I didn't watch TV all afternoon.
So who was going to know?
But it's like, I'm trying to, except for a certain kid, like I know I saw the Batman Adam West TV show, but I'm like, I don't know when I saw it. Since I wasn't watching TV in the afternoons, which is, I think, when it ran.
Yeah.
But I'm not 100%. I must have been able to watch some afternoons. But
here's something weird that I just realized. I watched the Tintin TV animated series and the Asterix animated films before I read any Tintin or Asterix comic books.
Mm-hmm.
I only started reading Tintin and Asterix when I was 9. Okay. But I remember, because we started playing Asterix in school when I was 8 or 9, when I was still in 3rd or 4th grade. And that was before I started reading European comics at the middle school library. But I knew they were comic book characters, but I didn't read their comic books because being albums, they were much more expensive than the digest magazines. But yeah, it's kind of weird because Asterix had a lot of merchandising. The same place where you could find the binders with the Hulk cover,
right?
And there was those pencil cases with Asterix on them. We could buy them. So yeah, I knew about them. But I remember that I watched the 2 movies, Asterix the Gaul and Asterix and Cleopatra, when I was about 8. So that was
I don't think there were any comic book movies to watch in like 1975.
No, they made a Tintin live action around 1966.
Yeah,
they made a Michel Vaillant live action in 1964. And in fact, they hired a professional racing driver to play Michel Vaillant. He was not an actor.
Matter of fact, all of the like comic book cartoons just about in the 70s were, when I was growing up, were leftovers from the 60s. Right. The Marvel, what was that one where they were just moving the pieces around?
Yeah.
Those
like 66.
Yeah, right. The Marvel 66 stuff.
It's amazing to think that the company those characters were only 5 years old at times. It's unfathomable now, but
the Super Friend stuff was kind of. I remember watching some of that on like Saturdays when I was able to watch TV. Sometimes watching the Super Friends, but
and the Super Friends came after the Filmation stuff because the Superman and Batman Adventure Hour were made by Filmation.
And Friar Tuck mentioned the Herculoids here. I didn't see the Herculoids probably till the early 80s when I was in high school, because that was a 60s cartoon that I don't think got rerun. But like I said, I didn't watch TV in the afternoon, so I didn't see it get rerun until like the early 80s.
Yeah, so Super Friends started in 73, and those I clearly remember watching. And so, and all the other ones, as you mentioned, were 60s cartoons.
Yeah, Spider-Man
so
cartoon.
Right,
you had the 66 Spider-Man cartoon, and then...
Which still has the greatest comic book theme song ever.
Of course.
I was singing that to myself this morning.
That was the one the Ramones covered that. I talked about that.
The Ramones covered that.
Yep.
Some of the backgrounds on that show were like super. I mean, I know it was like the late 60s, so who knows what the animators were intaking, but like very psychedelic, like kind of like watercolor, kind of bleeding into each other and stuff.
I still remember Ambush Bug from the early 80s making fun of the Spider-Man cartoon where he had a shot of Ambush Bug swinging like Spider-Man was above the buildings. And he's going, "What is my web line attached to?"
And that was a DC book.
Yeah. But again, that Spider-Man cartoon show hit with a lot of people, and they stayed in the memories. The wackiness of that is because the animated studio was running out of money, so they started reusing backgrounds and characters from other animations that they did. Because every time they brought in a new character, they had to pay Marvel money for that character. So eventually they ran out of money and decided, let's just recycle a lot of the stuff. So like the third season is really all recycled art from the first two seasons, and then artwork from whatever else they had left over. If I have the seasons correct. I just know that when it started, they were paying the money to Marvel, and then near the end, it's like, we're running out of money. Let's just recycle everything. And then as far as the Marvel cartoons before that, the legend heard at Marvel that they signed a deal, they were given money, and they smoked all that money away on pot. And so they used comic books. Now, again, this is the legend. They used the comic books they were given as reference and started cutting them out and animating that, and that's why the animation looks the way it does.
And thus, South
other
Park
than that legend, basically, that was the legend that I heard. I don't know if that was the truth in those particular animations.
That just reminded me of
today.
One of my favorite cartoons from my childhood that our friend Bunch always made fun of me for. Another 60s leftover was The Impossibles.
Yes.
Not actually a very good cartoon, but like the only superhero cartoon on TV that I was.
When that's all you have, you loving it for Coil Man does the impossible.
Fluid Man, Coil Man, Multiple Man,
and Multiple Man.
And it was, I think it was like Hanna-Barbera. Once again, cheaply made.
It was part of that Hanna-Barbera cartoon Power Hour, because they also had Frankenstein Jr. as part of that as well.
And they kept reusing background. You'd see them walk past the same door over and over three times in a row.
I'll tell you, I went on HBO Max recently and watched some Super Friends episodes. I'm talking like very quick snippets of ones I felt nostalgic about. Some of them, I had fun watching. Some of them are so rough to watch, to sit through. There was one in particular. I'm like, I gotta find this one because I remember it had the most ludicrous plot. There's probably many of them, and I'm like, wow, this is actually worse than I remember. It was like so. But listen, it was written for like the brain of like an 8-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Who,
Bunch always made fun of me for being the only fan of The Impossibles. I'm like, it was the only comic show, superhero show that was on.
Well, I mean, you just remind me that, like, I know you like the superhero cartoons, like Super Friends, because you in the bullpen you would do your great
Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice.
Yeah, loved it.
Spider-Man chat room was classic. I don't know. I saw Ralph Bashki live, and he talks about it. There's also episodes of Rocket Robin Hood that are Spidey episodes with the characters swapped out. He said, when in doubt, make him swing. The music in that show was fucking amazing. Yeah,
even Disney in the late 70s, early 80s was recycling animation. They just draw over some old scenes. So
even Beauty and the Beast is the same Beauty and the Beast, the same dance as in Cinderella.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's the same
I didn't
dance.
know they were doing it.
One of my favorite pieces of superhero music, which I think comes from the 60s or early 70s, which I only found in the 90s, and it became a bullpen standard after that, was they put out a Justice League album. You can find it on YouTube these days. It was an audio album, and it told stories of there's like a Metamorpho story, a Justice League story, like old radio play stories. So like I said, I think it was made in the late 60s, early 70s.
Well, records and comics was a big thing at that time.
Yeah.
So they would make records, and you have the comic strip on the back of the record.
Oh, there was no comic strip with this. There was
no?
just a record. That's all there was. We used to sing the songs in the book, like call the roll of the Justice League of America. And the funniest thing was they'd call the roll. They gave like Batman a Brooklyn accent. So they'd go,
of course
Superman,
they did.
Here, Batman, here. And they couldn't be bothered to hire a woman in the recording session. So you hear Wonder Woman and you hear a guy go, here. And it's just like, and you could just, like, the music was like leftover from the 50s. Only you could tell they're like old, musicians from the studio musicians who've been playing since the 50s, and now it's like the late 60s, early 70s, and they're trying to put together this hip, swinging young music, and it's just like, whoo, it's well done. I mean, it's all catchy. All the tunes are catchy and good. They're just, you could just tell they were like old fashioned the day they came out. But you can find them on YouTube. Look up the Justice League album.
I never ran into that. I gotta look that up.
Right in the 70s, now hard to rewatch. Trying to watch. Clutch Cargo is impossible to watch. That's the one with only the mouths move, right? Clutch Cargo, if I remember. If you consider there wasn't any internet or instant information then. Oh yeah, limited budget. They were doing the best with what they had, but
pretty much, and that's the thing. That's why I think I'm very forgiving every time I watch something and go, I kind of like that, because I remember when I used to get it. It's like, well, this isn't as bad as the other cartoons, but it is hard to go back and watch some of those cartoons. You definitely can't binge watch them. You can watch one or two, enjoy it, and then go on.
Yeah, I was sometimes not that long ago, and it was just a different world. I was explaining to one of my students this week as we were talking photography, and I was like, I was one of those people who carried a camera with me in the 80s. That's why in the 90s, that's why I have pictures of the Marvel bullpen and stuff. It's like, oh, you must have been clicking away. I'm like, no. Back then, when you shot things on film, there had to be a reason to take a picture. It's like, because, film and film processing costs money. So it's like nowadays, it was a completely different era when, one person out of 100 had a camera with them. And, you didn't take pictures at every opportunity like you do now because, digital is free. So I was just trying to explain the world only 20 years ago.
Yeah, you had to conserve shots. Like I only have 5 shots left in my camera, and just
right.
It was.
You couldn't just take a picture of someone's breakfast.
Yeah, there was no candid shots. Every shot was a meaning behind the shot.
Yeah.
I just found something here on Discogs. Stories and Songs about the Justice League of America from 1975.
It's from 75? That late? Wow.
Power Records. It's got The Flash, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Plastic Man, and Metamorpho on the cover.
That's it. They must have made that law. It sounds old-fashioned. It must have sounded old-fashioned the moment it came out. It does not sound like it came out in 1975.
Yeah, it doesn't even have credits anywhere on the cover. We have no idea who made these.
It's probably all studio musicians.
Yeah, but they could still tell us who created this stuff.
The Venture Brothers, when I want those warm fuzzies.
The back cover with Wonder Woman has some pretty nice art.
Yeah, there's some decent art on it. Hey, Tit Goblin. He's like, hello, everyone. Had a booth at the art show this weekend, and the pottery people next to me had dolphins on everything. I laugh because Rit Reed, I have dolphin. That's all I see now. He wanted to break at least one of their dolphin things. He was like, all right, I'll slab this one. I'll take that one home. Smash. This one we put a dolphin on.
There's a Superman album as well from the same year.
Yeah.
The Best Cup in the World, the Mixospitalic Menace.
Yeah.
In a Batman album. Let's see here.
After the show, look at like we used to sing those songs in the bullpen. That's how well we knew it.
This thing has surf rock. The Batman album has surf rock in it.
And I actually got the album. Like I said, it came out in 75. I don't know what year I got it. Let's say 1993. And it was in like the cutout bin at the local random department store. I was just like, what the heck? For those of you who don't know what a cutout bin is, that's where discount records went. And I never knew it was called a cutout bin till I got to Marvel, and somebody said, oh, yeah, that's the cutout bin.
I never heard it until right now. So thank you for...
They literally cut a notch in the record jacket. So it's like...
that went all the way to CDs, too.
Yeah, they'd do it in CDs.
Physically cut.
They'd punch a hole right through the plastic CD case.
I remember some CDs having the jewel cases having like looks like it was like sawed like perfectly. Maybe that was that.
That was probably the cutout.
Yeah, that was the cutout because I do recall having CDs like that.
Yeah, because I remember getting that record and going, "Where the hell is this from?" I got it. It's like I didn't even collect records or anything ever. I was always a tape cassette guy in my youth. But I was like, I got to get this record, and I was just like blown away by it. And Metamorpho, whenever he used this, I'm going to change my form into he would do these grunts because it was all theater of the mind. So
I have they made so many of those types of records that I started buying them mainly because of the artwork on it, because it would be original art to that item. And they did quite a few, and they would be mini records. So there was a whole line of them that was being done with like the Star Trek. I think the Gold Key books were redone that way. And then there's a bunch of Spider-Man ones. I have the Spider-Man ones, but they also did CDs as well. Like I have Godzilla, the first Marvel comic, was done in a CD, and it's basically somebody reading the comic itself.
Yeah, I remember back in. I don't know, 2005 when Mark Beasley in Marvel, he was playing. He'd pull up on YouTube the Merry Marvel Marching Society record with Flo is talking on or singing on it. And so I was like, and they're like, "Is that Flo?" And I was like, and she was right down the hall at that point. So like, I mean, I knew of that record,
right?
And they talked to like, here's I guess Stan just kind of names people around the bullpen,
right?
The bullpen,
yeah,
and just like, This stuff's great. But like in terms of a comic artist doing record covers, like at the tail end of the hair metal era. So like we're talking like 90, 91. I mean, I grew up in North Jersey, so there was a band that got pretty popular on MTV called Trickster. This is like, they had a couple hits on MTV like around 90, 91. They're from Paramus, and the cover art is by Neil Adams. It's just kind of a spin on a Joker. So like I remember seeing the cover. I'm like, oh, it's awesome. It's comic art, and like no wonder why it looked kind of like a familiar style because it was Neil Adams. So I'm gonna guess these guys are comic fans, or maybe an art director at the label had a relationship with Continuity Studios, and that's how that happened. But this is like one of the last bands of that era to have like airplay on MTV.
Let me show you one of the comics I got this week, and I still don't understand exactly what the point of this comic is. This is the Love Everlasting. It's so well done, though. Like, this is the one that apes romance comics styles throughout history. And so, like the first issue had like 3 different styles and 3 different stories. Instead of the little motif was the it was the same woman who starred in each story, and she became aware that she was in a romance comic. We're on issue 4 now, and I'm still not sure what that overall story means. But this one, like, it's written by who's writing this? Tom King, and it's drawn by Elsa Charretier, and Matt Hollingsworth is the colorist. Clayton Cowles is the letterer. But this one was just a really, really good sort of romance comic story to begin with.
Who's the publisher?
Image.
Okay.
This one took place in World War I. First of all, I'm a sucker for World War I stories because it was just such a tragic war where just so many people died, and they died like senselessly in trenches. So it was just kind of like, the stories of World War I are permeated with sadness and the inevitability of death kind of thing. And so is this one. It takes place, I think it's in France in 1916 or something. And there's our lead character again, this woman who's a singer in a little place. And the story is that and she's talking about how, these soldiers come in and they all fall in love with her. She's like, that's just part of my job. They're all going to fall in love with me. It's the way it is. It's wartime. I'm the only woman they see. I'm singing to them. So the story starts when this group of guys comes in. There's 5 or 6 of them, and the one guy falls in love with her, of course, and says, "Oh, I'm in love with you." She's like, "That's nice." Yeah. And over the story, she starts to have feelings for him too, but it became their tradition. She only sees him now every few months, but it became their tradition when one of them died to go there and have a drink in his name. And it's just, a really sad story. To Raphael, the bastard, they're all. And this, what's her name here? Elsa is a terrific storyteller. She's got this Bruce Timm, Darwin Cook like style going, but she's a terrific storyteller. And then the story ends with him going, he's the last one left alive. He's going to visit her. And she's like, well, and he's like, this is the last time I'm going to see you. I know I'm next. I know I'm going to die. There's no way out of it. And she's like, oh, I know a way out of it if you want to get out of it. And he's like, what? And he's like, kiss me. And so she kisses him and the music plays. And then the last page is the beginning of another love story that she's in, but he's not in it, I don't think. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't think he survived so I guess her saying she knows a way out is her being self-aware that she's in a story again. But I'm not 100% sure, because all of a sudden it was just like, oh, new 1-page story set up. I think that. So I was like, I really don't have an idea of what the overall gist of this series is, but this individual story was terrific, though. It was just really good. What was that?
Story-wise, then he is forever alive in that story because she stops the story.
That could be
how
it.
She saves him from
by
being
stopping the story and going to the next one.
Because those stories always end with a kiss.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So
I
if
get
she's
that,
self-aware, then he'll always be alive because she stopped the story.
I was somewhere near that, but
that's
quite
the only thing
there.
I can guess.
I think that makes sense to me. But like, really well done. She's a terrific storyteller, which I'd like to juxtapose with 3 Keys. Which is this guy. I bought the first issue, was unsure. I liked the art in it so much because it's this Adam Hughes-ish guy. And he really has some nice illustrations in here.
What's his name?
What is his name? This is by created, written, and drawn by David Messina.
You spell Mussina?
Messina. He really is Adam Hughes influenced. From the Adam, there's not a lot. And
I love Adam Hughes' art. So hey,
and there's this wonderful Cthulhu story kind of going on with these old gods waking up, but the storytelling is a little choppy. And I'm like, I just wish he was a little better storyteller, and it would be a no-brainer. But like after like reading something like this, where the storytelling is just so sweet, reading something like this where I like the drawings, I like the general plot, but the storytelling is kind of herky jerky. I think I'm gonna buy at least one more issue of this to give it another issue, because maybe he'll improve.
I looked at. I mean, your criticism is the storytelling. His actual art, his actual hand as an artist. I really like his stuff a lot.
Terrific. He's looking at the individual drawings, terrific, and the storytelling isn't bad. I understood it all. It's just a little herky jerky in terms of me getting into it. I think visually it wasn't smooth enough. Like this storytelling, this is just so smooth. It's just you don't even realize you're reading a comic. It's so good. The storytelling is so good.
So you really have an eye for that, because I think I'm such a comic book art lover that I think I was always hung up on the individual illustrations as their own thing, rather than how they flowed, in telling a story. I suppose I would have picked up on it if it was completely jarring.
Right.
Where it's just like I don't understand what happened to panel to panel.
Yeah, I won't say that about that. It's not completely jarring. It was just a little herky jerky.
One of the things that I used to do when I would read weekly books is, and I remember this is one of the clear things, I would get the stack of books, and before I read them, I would actually put them in the order that I think I would enjoy them, and the better book I would put at the bottom to read up to it. And it was more like, because I was reading so many books at the time, I kind of knew where some of the stories might have been going. Right. I don't know if you guys ever did anything like that. Do you put in a particular reading order?
I have done that in the past, but now I'm more spontaneous in that. I go, oh, let me read this one. Nah. Oh, no, I'll read this one. And so it's like, and sometimes I find myself going, ooh, I really want to read that one, but I'll read this one first. I don't know why. Just
I felt like I couldn't wait. I went to the one I wanted to read right away,
What's funny is sometimes I'm in the store and I'm like, "Ooh, that's the one I want to read first." But by the time I get home, I'm like, "I'll read that one second or third." It's like I want to give it a little more time. It's funny. The funniest reading habit I ever saw was I had this one guy I used to know, an acquaintance, who, when he would get a new comic book, the first thing he would do was flip to the last page to see how it ends. I guess he really wanted to know how it ended. And I'd be like, he'd see how it ends and then he'd go back and read it. And I'd be like, that's insane. What kind of madness is that? The whole idea is you don't want to know how. No, he wanted to know how it ended right away.
I would get upset when I turn a page and I grab 2 by accident. Like, oh no, I didn't want to know that. Skip to the end. That's wild.
The only guy I ever knew who did that, like it said, it sticks in my mind 30 years later. But I was just like, what? I've never seen anybody read a comic book like that. That's like another thing I never saw. My friend Ed Murr, who usually you hand someone a stack of comics. Like, let's just say I hand you Radiant Black 1 through 10. Hand you Radiant Black 1 through 10. You look through them, whatever you do, check them out, and hand me back a stack of Radiant Black 1 through 10. That's comic book fans. Ed, if he handed me back the stack of Radiant Black, it would be 9, 6, 3, 1. And this happened enough times that one day I was like, wow, how does that happen? Like, nobody does that. And I'd watch him, and I watched him once, and as he was looking through he'd look through them all, and then he'd start shuffling them. And look through them again and shuffle them. And I'm like, I've never seen anyone look through comics like that. They shuffle them as they look through them. Everybody looks through them in order. That's why they have numbers on them. That's another weird comic habit I've only seen in one person. Mm-hmm. But still not as bad as looking at the last page first.
Wondering if he was just shuffling them in order of cover art.
In case he died before he finished it.
Yeah.
I still have my Tower Power comics and 45 records, Captain America, Hulk, and those ones I always knew about, but never got any.
Are those the ones that are like the Star Trek? I had one. It was a Star Trek one. It was like in a comic book. It had a record and it had sound effects and all.
One,
they did a lot of the superheroes had them. I have a bunch of the Spider-Man ones.
When the bottom cover of comics is clipped off for no returns, like record CD cases, how much value do you think that takes off the comic? Most of it. And it was usually the logos that got ripped off.
Yeah, I always heard about their front cover. In fact, my dad, he had that
or the whole cover. Yeah.
Right. It was my dad, it was a mystery to him for 30, 40 years that his father would bring home comics and didn't have the covers. He never knew why. Right. And I explained to him the whole newsstand return thing, and they were just not supposed to have sold those, but they sold them probably at like half price or a quarter price, and they still got the return credit. So
some companies still make you return the cover.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which ones. Occasionally, my LCS, they mention it to me. They gotta tear off some covers and return them. Matter of fact, I've got a few coverless comics they just gave me that I was going to use for collage or something.
Because it's so uncommon in the direct market to have returns or like maybe partial returnability. To kind of like, the whole idea of the direct market was, okay, you did a discount for the stores, yet you own it. Like, so it's basically, it's assigning risk. It's like but yeah, I don't even know. I remember when I was last at Marvel, again, this was like over 15 years ago, but like, who was in charge of like newsstand distribution was Ski I think at that point, or he had that role, I think, at one of the companies at one point.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of became such a minute part of the business.
Matter of fact, I think the last thing I heard that was returnable that I remember was those Aftershock graphic novels that I've been buying. Because I'd go in and he'd have 10 shelf copies of an Aftershock graphic novel. And I was just like, I know I'm buying one. I didn't know. I would think he'd find it hard to sell 10 copies of an Aftershock graphic novel. Because I don't know how well they're good. I enjoy them. I've been buying them all. But I don't know if the store can sell 10. But since then I said, they're returnable. I was like, oh, okay. Then his John, who works for him, says, but he has to remember to return them, which doesn't always happen, apparently.
I tell you, they were trying. There's been so many attempts over the last 20 years to try to ignite some kind of mainstream interest in floppies, at least.
Yeah.
And there was, Jerry, you might remember this, and Wilson, there was this initiative in the mid 2000s when the movies started to happen. They did these oversized comics that were like in Walgreens and maybe in toy stores and stuff like that. They were like, it was the same comic. It was the same, regular trim size comic material, but then printed at a bigger size. It wasn't like, it wasn't that treasury size. It's somewhere in between. Rather comic and treasuries in between. Those. And it was this initiative that 04, 05, and they try to get those maybe the bigger size they thought might be more appealing to like younger readers or something. I don't know what it was. And then there was all these attempts to do all the digests. Does Marvel do the digests anymore?
Marvel has been putting out their Masterworks line at manga size, 6x9.
You're kidding me?
No, they've got.
Is it color or is it black and white?
It's color. The color about $15. It's Masterworks at 6x9 size and color. They're doing all their early 60s stuff. I guess that's aiming at that manga bookstore audience.
I remember in the mid 2000s.
But I think they're expensive, aren't they?
They're not that. They're under $20, I think.
They're still too expensive to convince the manga bars to go with them.
I mean, I remember some of the ones from the
color.
Yeah, like the mid 2000s. There was a Mary Jane one, then there was some other but they were really beautiful. The production value was. They were really nice books. It just, they were tempting just to get into that shelf space of the manga, all that stuff in a familiar format. But I don't know.
Yeah, but if you're saying they were large format, I can see why that would fail, only because there are no bags and boards. They're not easy to put away.
But those they were trying to position to not like the collector mentality. They were just trying to go to like, in mainstream, like, Walgreens and toy stores and stuff like that. But I also know I do generally agree with you, because I remember when Hard Boiled came out. And that was like a weird oversized format. It wasn't even just magazine size. It was like the square format. I think it was a Hard Boiled or something else, but like
I think it was Hard Boiled. It was that was sort of European graphic album proportions.
And I remember retailers saying one of the things that may be hurting the sales of it is the odd.
I remember Barry Windsor Smith's Storyteller. Do you remember that book from the 90s?
No.
Tabloid size. And Barry Windsor Smith doing comics should be really popular,
right?
But Barry Windsor Smith was annoyed at it because he said one of the reasons it's not selling is it's oversized. Fans don't want, but despite the fact that it's got oversized Barry Windsor Smith artwork in it, a lot of fans weren't interested because there's not bags and boards and boxes for it.
There's no real way to put it away, and it's like, I know this when in comic book shops, whenever you did something that was just a larger size, not by much, just even a little bit, they would be falling off the shelves.
Oh yeah,
because of the way the shelf space was made.
Right.
And it's like the moment you change the format, and I get it, sometimes you wanted a larger format. Certain artists calls for that, but again, if you want a mass market thing, it needs to fit into the same boxes people are going to put these things away. Even if they aren't collectors, if they're buying a book at Walmart and they like it, they're going to buy the next one. They become collectors. And there are certain things out there that, kind of go hand in hand. I remember comic book shop owners used to complain about, Pokemon cards. The kids are buying this thing and I don't understand them. And it's like, but they're selling.
Yeah.
You have a kid buying something that they're buying, they're opening up and they're putting it in sleeves. You can take that and send them over to comics. Yeah. If they already have a collector and putting away mentality, get your store full of these Pokemon cards. And you can just transfer one to the other. And yes, sometimes the transfer won't happen, but if the kid already is in the mentality of keeping something and putting it away, the collector is created right there. But they were complaining about it because it's like they're just coming in here and buying these cards. They're not buying the comics.
They don't. They don't want to bother. It's tough selling Pokemon cards.
We have a store here in Lisbon. They've always had, since I remember going there for the first time, anything that's out of the regular size, it actually has a display that allows people to find them better. Because they're larger,
right?
So they have something just for them.
The complete opposite.
They kind of put it like it's a like it's your like they're inside your home and you have all the vases displayed in the bookcase. So they have some at the back and some to the front, but you can see all of them. So if you do something in regular format, it actually gets lost among all the other comics. But then I remember a few years ago, some guy tried to open a new store. The guy must have been an idiot because he refused to carry trade paperbacks and manga.
You wanted people to. As they said in Cool Hand Luke, some people you just can't reach.
Yeah, he said, I only want to sell floppies. What are you, an idiot?
It's if he only understood floppies, and if people have like this fear of putting their toe in the water and all.
Well, I also think I understand that in that, like, my comic shop doesn't sell a lot of trade paperbacks and stuff like that because they can't compete with Amazon.
Right.
They're like, why should it's like if you want to order a book through us, it'll be in 2 weeks. If you want to order through Amazon, it'll be here tomorrow. And it said, in Amazon, their prices, they're lower, so they don't deal in a lot. Another thing, though, I did get this week, the Night Eaters hardcover.
Marjorie Liu.
Yeah, Marjorie Liu and Asana Takeda.
Is this
a Monstrous team?
I was going to say, is this related to Monstrous, or is it a whole other thing?
No, they took a break from Monstrous to do this. I haven't read it yet. I just got it yesterday. And I didn't even pre-order this. I didn't realize it was going to be a hardcover book. I remember reading about them taking a break from Monstrous to do another book. I thought it was going to be a comic. So I got in there today, and I think the retail price on this is $25. I'm not even sure what I paid for it. I usually get a discount. And John, who works at the shop, was like, he had a couple of these on the shelf. I'm sure Roy, who does the ordering, he's the owner, was like, I got some Monstrous fans in here. I may as well order a couple copies of it. And John was like, do you want a copy of the Monstrous? And it was funny. As I was leaving for the comic shop, I threw an extra 20 in my wallet. I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw an extra 20 in my wallet just in case there's something there special today. And sure enough, this was there. I was like, all right, I'll take it. The Night Eaters.
It's listen, that's beautiful. So again, guilty. I've looked through Monstrous because I love the art. I have not read Monstrous, if that makes sense. So, but I need to go on. I need to go online and look at that art process, just of curiosity. I'm sure I really like the look of her stuff.
I think it's colored. She does pencils and colors over it.
I think so too, because
I don't know if they're digital pencils or real pencils.
Has real kind of like grit to it, right?
Yeah. And this is also I've seen this before, but not. This is a diamond exclusive limited run of 3,000 copies. Has an all new exclusive cover by illustrators Asana Takeda. So that says all that back there. So this, I guess, I've seen Diamond do if you want this cover, you have to get it at your local comic shop. So,
do you like Lady Mechanica, or is it not your speed?
Hold on a second. I didn't even open this. I think it comes with an autograph too.
I think it's an M.
Yeah, it looks like
I guess you're supposed to. It's a label. You're supposed to stick this on yourself. What do they call this? A tip-in plate. So I guess I'm supposed to adhere this to my.
I thought it would be like a book plate.
Yeah,
I've only heard of book plate. I never heard of tip-in plate.
Yeah, tip-in plate. I don't know if a tip-in plate is one that's unattached or one they bind in by. I think a tip-in plate might be something that when the book gets bound, they print the plate on another press and then stick it in right before it's bound. I think that might be what a tip-in plate is. But I didn't even realize that one came with an autograph.
Do you like Lady Mechanica? Do you like that kind of stuff? Or
I love the covers. I bought my first Lady Mechanica miniseries just this year. I forget the name of it. It was okay.
Tablet of Destinies, or that's the second one.
I don't remember which one it was. It's something with that. It delved into her childhood.
It
was okay.
I love the covers too, but like I'm going to give him Benitez. I give him a lot of credit for printing money, man. Like I'm supportive of that. Like he just does variants upon variants. He'll he'll do like Emerald City Comic Con. He'll do like her wearing like
why not?
Why not? Like, hey, it's like
that's what's selling. Yeah.
Matter
of fact, I think I have a digital collection of Lady Mechanica covers. Sometimes what I do, if I like the covers of books, I just get a digital copy of the cover. I don't even keep the whole book, and I put all the covers in a CBZ file, so I can just look. I have all like the Action Comics covers and all the Wonder Woman covers in one CBZ file.
So when you say Wonder Woman, you mean the Hughes stuff, or just like going back?
No, well, I actually do have the Hughes stuff, but I have the stuff going all the way back to issue 1 of the Golden Age Wonder Woman.
Wow, and same thing with Action.
Yes, because somebody posted them,
right?
On the Usenet, so I just downloaded them, just kept the covers, and put them in their own file.
You just flipped around, yeah.
I've been buying the giant size Image Artist proof editions lately on clearance because local stores couldn't shelve them right. Wow, I wish they took off and there were more. I've always wanted to get some of those, but I'd have to. My comic shop won't get shelf copies of those.
Can you give me an example of one? I might
They're 11 by 17, black and white. So that's what they're called. Yeah. Artist proof edition. You're supposed to be looking at like the line art from it, as if it was an artist proof that he goes through and checks.
Okay, so it's a good
treasury edition size, I think, around 11 by 17.
So it's a little bit different than oh god, what's the
an artist edition? Yeah,
the IDWs,
right.
One of which I watched one of your videos as you flip through, which was the Marvel covers that had like some Art Adams. It was more modern stuff.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I always wanted one of those, but like, so it's they're usually like $100-$150.
Yeah, there's a few I bought just because they were dirt cheap, but I haven't bought a new one in a while. I actually did buy a new one this spring / early summer and had to return it. Because I bought the EC Comics cover collection, which I got for a good price, only around $80. I was shocked. Bought it used on Amazon. It looked like someone took a sledgehammer to all four corners.
It was damaged. Okay.
Damaged in a way I couldn't believe. I mean, it looked like someone you had to drop it from a height on all four corners to get it this damaged.
Look, when you're paying that much for a book, if it's a discount, you still.
Yeah, this was where you don't pay $80 for a book. I've never seen a book that damaged. If it was one corner was dinged a little, that's one thing. All four corners were smashed, and such that the paper in all four corners was crinkled. It wasn't just the cover that
got to the actual pages.
Yeah. And it was like, only now do I realize I should have made a video about it. But it was like I was so upset, I returned it within an hour. I was on Amazon, set up the return, had it to the UPS drop off all within an hour.
You didn't want to look at it, yeah.
I didn't want to look at it.
I understand. The one that my first one I may get early next year or first quarter is Kevin Nolan.
Yeah,
they're doing I love Kevin Nolan. I just love I always love that line.
Which stuff?
Marvel covers and probably some.
Okay.
So so that'd be like his Doctor Strange and Strange Tale stuff. There's some Wolverine stuff he did.
I know a few people who are big Kevin Nolan fans. He's never. I'm not that I dislike his stuff, but he's never really spoken to me. I see his stuff and it's good, but I'm not.
I think we all have artists that that a lot of people love and you just don't get it, and I think everyone's allowed that.
But I think most of us like the same artists.
Yeah. What I'm saying is there's some other ones that are
and there are I get Kevin Nolan isn't a universally loved artist, but people who love Kevin Nolan love Kevin Nolan stuff. That's right. And it's I'm not even saying I dislike it, but it's just the level of love you and other people I know have for Kevin Nolan is the gap is huge, and there aren't a lot of artists like that.
Yeah, there's a few artists that I can name.
Who do you think is like that?
Who don't do it for me?
Not who don't, who are, but not somebody like Not somebody like Rob Liefeld, who's controversial, or even somebody like Jim Lee, who doesn't do it for me, but I can understand people like his style. There's very few like artists who love Jim Lee. Like all the people I know who love Kevin Nolan are artists.
There are a few.
I think that's the disconnect I have. I'm like, if I'm an artist, I should love Kevin Nolan too. How come I don't?
No, then you're like, why wouldn't I get this? Why is this? But that's just
well, no, I understand not getting things, but it's like,
that's fine.
Usually, like there are certain cartoonists who are artists, and like everybody I know loves Alex Toth, who's an artist. He's the ultimate artist. And there's other guys like that who, but usually we kind of all agree about them.
There's a few artists that I can think of that are you'll know without me naming names, you'll know who I'm talking about, who are well known for being really good storytellers and also really good at hitting their deadlines.
Yeah.
And there's a few of those. I can think of two off the hand, and one of them I like better than the other, but one of them I really never understood. Like I just thought it was just
you're allowed to name names. No one's gonna get insulted.
Yeah. The one that I'll name Bagley. Bagley is the one that I just like.
Bagley I've never been a fan of just because he's got little stylized quirks that bother me. That's all it is.
I don't like his drawing. I just like, I just don't like his. I think it's kind of really plain vanilla, and
it's not even that I don't like his drawing. It's that I don't like certain aspects of his drawing. I can read Bagley and go a couple of pages, and then I turn the next page and I'm like, oh. But I have to say, he's very, though he still has some of these quirks that occasionally bother me. His style is like a lot different today than it was 10 or 20 years ago, and it's
I like to revisit.
I won't say that the style is the same. The technique is different.
Yeah, the technique is different. There you go.
And I'll tell you why readers like Mark Bagley. He's very good at translating the intent of the writer into something that they can understand.
Right.
And that's why I mentioned the storytelling. What do you mean by the technique is different?
His technique is very. It used to be more stylized. Now you can see some Mark Bagley pages and not realize they're Mark Bagley pages. They're so, rounded, computer colorized, slickly drawn.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to give him another chance. I want to check it out. Yeah.
But then you see like
Mark Bagley now knows how to do movement on non-action scenes.
Yeah.
Which was his biggest fault when he started drawing Spider-Man back in 1994. It was all about the image generation. Characters moving in action, but whenever you saw characters just talking, he was good at giving them some smirks to portray emotion, but his body language was kind of stiff.
And not only is his drawing better, the finishing is better.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's finishing himself. I think his stuff blossomed in this day and age of computer coloring more, but there's still some weird quirks to him that bother me. But they bother me. I think I read something of his, I don't know, last year, the year before, and I was like, wow, I kind of liked it. I was okay with that.
Well, I know what I got to dig up, and actually, coincidentally, the Kayfabe guys did an episode about this very recently. Is Bagley won the Marvel Tryout Book Contest, right? That's how.
Yes, that's how he first came to Marvel.
I need to go back and dig up his submission that he won it with, because this is the thing: is I feel like I've seen it, and I feel like it didn't look like the stuff that he was doing, like in the early mid 2000s. I feel like it looked different.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I'm sure I could just dig it up online, but
I know I physically held those pages because I think Ski had them in his office, and I can't remember what they look like for the life of me.
Are you talking about Marvel Tryout? You're talking about the Tryout book pages?
Yeah, the pages that he had sent in for it, because Ski had them. I remember he clearly had them in the office. in his office. But as far as like art style is concerned, it's like for me, Bagley was weird when he was over at DC. It was like in my mind, he was a Marvel artist.
Yeah, right.
And his characters didn't look correct for Superman or whatever he was drawing over at DC. I can't remember what he was drawing over at DC. I was happy with him on Spider-Man, but I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so for me that was fine for him doing that type of stuff. And I liked his New Warrior stuff as well. But again, it's one of those things is that I was so used to him drawing in that particular style for that particular book. Whenever he went anywhere else, to me, it's like it doesn't look right. This is not what
it didn't translate.
Yeah, and that was just one of those things like some artists can translate the art into different companies, but then you have some artists who is like if he's not drawing, like there's artists who were drawing Conan, and you only ever want them drawing Conan, because if they were drawing anything else, it didn't feel right. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but it's like John Buscema's superhero stuff was fun, but that was a person who should only have been drawing Conan stuff. That
a lot of Avenger fans will disagree with you.
Oh, completely. And I even own a page of him drawing Spider-Man. But I know he wasn't really into the superhero
Right, he loved
stuff,
Conan more.
But he loved Conan more. And it was just one of those things where it's a lot of fun, but at the same time, sometimes you may, personally pigeonhole artists with only one particular type of style.
Do any of you guys know Nolan's early 80s fanzine work, like Ranger Sly here does, Amazing Heroes or Comics Journal? I don't remember it. So,
well, first of all, Ranger Sly, you have very good taste.
In that, I do remember those books. I really enjoyed those books.
Yeah.
I don't remember his stuff on it.
Yeah, I don't. But I remember
the first time Go ahead, Jared. I'm sorry.
No, I just remember. I remember fanzine work in it, but not his specifically.
The first time I ever saw his work definitely was in '86. It was either this Batman cover, which I love, which has a character, I think it's called the Mime, choking Batman from behind, but or something like that. And then he was doing some covers for Marvel. This is pre-Doctor Strange, pre-Strange. He did a couple of Alpha Flight covers that I really liked. So he was doing cover work, and also liked about his stuff. Ranger Sly was that I'm pretty sure they let him color his own stuff because he had a very distinct palette that he used. He used like these pinups,
covers and back
covers. Yeah. I know he illustrated Batman Outsiders Annual in '86. He started working for the Big Two in '86 because that's where I really saw it, maybe a year or two earlier. But
yeah. I don't think that. I also think I haven't seen a lot of his work because I stopped buying mainstream Marvel and DC comics somewhere around 85, 86. I've always bought some here or there over the years, but it's like I had one Marvel comic on my pull list from like 85 until 96. Captain America was my only Marvel comic on my pull list.
But you got all your comps, Marvel and DC.
Yeah, but I didn't read them.
Okay.
I wasn't interested in them that much. I would read some stuff. I don't want to say I didn't read.
You'd probably at least flip through them and see what was going on.
But I don't think I've flipped through a lot of Kevin Nolan, so I could just be not that familiar with it.
I feel like it could be wrong. I feel like he really became like a cover artist.
That is the one Kevin Nolan thing I have. I forgot about that he did that. I have a collected edition of Grimwood's Daughter that came out, I don't know, 5-10 years ago that I bought. That was good. I enjoyed that. So Dalgota was a good book too. I enjoyed that one. I have most of those still. But yeah, there's a Grimwood's Daughter collected edition out there. I'd forgot Kevin Nolan did that. That might be the one Kevin Nolan thing I have. Yeah, Nolan drew very too few stories. Most of his published work is as an inker and colorist. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
there's a pun. Go ahead, Wilson.
To me, I picture him as a cover artist from DC. I do know I have like the Alpha Flight stuff because I was collecting those books, but he doesn't pop up to me as a Marvel artist, I guess, in a way. And I couldn't even tell you for the life of me a single comic book he drew. I remember covers, but not issues.
The one I knew was that Outsiders annual from like '86, but and then some odd there were some annuals like in the '80s that were like there was an artist on 3 pages and different artists on the next 3 pages. Mm-hmm. So I remember him doing a couple of Avengers books. One odd pairing. I love both artists, but he the original Punisher ongoing series that started in '87. Nolan inked a cover that was penciled by Mike Mignola. So talk about 2 guys with 2 very distinctive styles. They didn't clash. I mean, it looked really good, but I'm just saying I wouldn't expect. You figure you get like a Terry Austin or someone who's like kind of a chameleon with like style, But that was an odd pairing. It worked though.
He designed many characters for Batman the Animated Series. Man-Bat, the Mad Hatter, and Penguin. Okay.
Speaking of which, you saw that Kevin Conroy passed away.
There was a lot of death this week.
Yeah.
Kevin Conroy.
Oh, Pacheco, yeah.
Yeah, matter of fact, let me tell you this. Aerosmith, so smart in their fine uniforms. I have the original issues of this. This is the one from, I think it originally appeared in like 2005. It's like,
let me look this up. It looks like awesome.
And just last year, he and Kurt Busiek put out a new series of Aerosmith, which was set to be a trilogy. So I guess we're never getting volumes 2 and 3.
Well, I sincerely hope that Pacheco's friends like Rafa Fontaris or Jesus Merino, they can finish those stories.
I'd buy it if they did. I'd like to see that. But this one I put on my wish list sometime last year when they announced it was coming out. Despite me having the original issues, they said, I forget which company, I forget where the original Aerosmith came out.
It was with the Cliffhanger label.
A Cliffhanger. There was some like light nudity in it some places that they made them censor out. So in this, like I said, I haven't read this yet, this version of it yet. They put the nudity back in. So I'm like, all right, I want the nudity back in version. And it's been sitting on my pull list for a year. It only came out this year. I put it on there before it was even out. And then the news came that Carlos Pacheco died, and I was like, it made me so sad. I'm like, you know what? I may as well order this book now.
I like this stuff a lot. I didn't see that much of his stuff, but like the first time I saw it was mid '90s. Maybe it was my intern days of Marvel, like '94, where there was.
I remember seeing him on Fantastic Four. And maybe a couple of other things, but it was Avengers Forever that made me a fan.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
what I really liked about his art is his characters. Well, I'm sorry, Wilson?
No, I'm saying all that stuff was amazing to look at. I was lucky enough to hold that run from the Fantastic Four to Avengers Forever. Beautiful artwork.
Right.
Well, what I really liked about his art is that his characters had a lot of volume. They really looked like they were rounded, and I just there was. With the kind of sad news of his passing this week, there was the same kind of piece going around. It was one with with Bishop and a couple other mutants. Like it was a piece he did probably 94, 93, 94. And it's still to this day, it's one of my favorite pieces of his.
Yeah, I noticed his work. Like I'm not reading a lot of Marvel comics, but his work caught my eye, and I may have read an issue or two of the Fantastic Four. I don't remember. But Avengers Forever, I actually read from beginning to end, as it came out, which is rare for me in those days.
When was
rare European Pacheco covers and a very nice tribute on the 4-Color Fossil show?
Yes, the Spanish publisher Comics Forum. They were a subsidiary of Planeta Agostini. And they had the rights to Marvel back in the 90s. And Pacheco did some original covers for a few of the regular titles. But the most interesting work was when they reprinted some classic storylines, like the meeting between Shang-Chi and and Velcro in Carlton Velcro in the first appearances of the guy with the blades for his hands.
Razor Fist.
Razor Fist, yeah.
I was going to say Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah, and it did an amazing job with Shang-Chi. It looked amazing. He should have drawn he did draw the character. I didn't remember. Then I remembered later. He did draw the character when he was drawing the X-Men. Pacheco's drawing the X-Men, and Shang-Chi guest starred in a couple of issues. But the best covers are for the Squadron Supreme storyline in the Avengers back in the Steve Englehart days. And Pacheco did covers for those issues, reprinting those, and the Wild West cover with Thor and Moondragon dressed as people from 1870. It looks amazing. It's actually more real. It's actually more believable than that scene as drawn by George Paris.
The only reason I remember Razor Fist's name is because one of my favorite Gene Day Master of Kung Fu covers, I think it was around issue 101, was just this one. First of all, if you don't know who Razor Fist is, he was a Shang-Chi villain, and he was such like a Hong Kong Kung Fu villain where he had no hands. His hands were cut off at the forearm, and he had like sword blades where his hands should be. And there's just this really nicely drawn Gene Day cover with like Shang-Chi in like this Bruce Lee pose and it just said like Razor Fist, Razor Fist, Razor Fist, and you had a whole bunch of Razor Fist swords arm like coming up from the bottom of the cover. I always liked that cover. So
did Gene Day take over after Zek, or is that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. They were both fantastic.
Yeah, they did some good stuff. Let's see. Nolan's early work after Fantagraphics was for Marvel, a couple of issues of Doctor Strange and a Moon Knight in the 80s. Yeah, I remember the Nolan fans I know love that Doctor Strange book.
Yeah, I did these Strange Tales covers. That was that anthology. It was half Doctor Strange, half Cloak and Dagger.
Okay.
And then that got canceled on, I think, the Doctor Strange Doctor Strange regular series.
Here's Paulo dug out the covers.
Yeah, there's some Pacheco covers this is from the Clásicos Marvel series. So this is the first appearances of Moon Knight, and there with Werewolf by Night. This one is from right after the Kree-Skrull War ended, when Hawkeye started wearing the miniskirt.
Yeah.
And so these are the Barry Windsor Smith issues. And this one with Hercules. So. What year
was this? Did these come out? Did he draw these?
Yes. So this would have been around 92 or 93. Okay. It was shortly before it started doing work for Marvel UK.
Right.
Yeah, and he did the cover for the Wolverine miniseries reprint. So he's him trying to do a Frank Miller.
I was going to say, like, that looks so much like the Lone Wolf and the Cub kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I have to show you what that actually looks like.
And this is from the Neil Adams X-Men. So this has a style that doesn't even look like regular Pacheco,
right.
Not Pacheco, not Adams. It looks a lot more cartoony, not just because of the way that the colors are done. And this Zabu looks great.
Yeah,
that looks more like it, because he drew, I think, a few things with Zabu in it.
That's a good example of the volume he can get in a drawing.
Right. That was what came to mind. Just the roundness of everything.
Right.
And these are the Avengers Squadron Supreme storyline. So we did that the Avengers JLA cover that never got published.
Perez.
Yeah. And this one is the.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That one's fun.
Very, very, very.
What are those characters? Because at first I'm like, is this League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? What am I looking at?
No. So this they're and that's Squadron Supreme storyline. There's one issue where a group of the Avengers go back in time
in the 70s.
To fight Kang.
Right.
And they meet the Marvel Western heroes.
I see. Okay.
So
that's the mid 70s Avengers.
Yeah,
that's
and there's a couple of pages where the Avengers have to dress up like they're from the late 19th century. So that's Moondragon and Thor.
They gotta blend in.
Yeah. Of course, Thor doesn't blend in much because he's 8 foot tall.
Who's the one in the back behind Moondragon next to Thor?
It's the Two-Gun Kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's Hawkeye at the front.
Hawkeye.
I figured it was Hawkeye.
And this is the Shang-Chi and Razor Fist.
Razor Fist.
And this is a Fantastic Four story, and it's completely painted. Looks very, very weird.
Yeah.
And this is a superhero comic that Carlos Pacheco and Rafael Marin created, but he did the design. Pacheco did the designs, but he didn't draw the story. The story was drawn by Rafa Fonteriz, and they're called Iberia Inc. They're superheroes. The story set in Spain. There's a mini series. This hasn't been reprinted in a very, very long time, and it's hard to find even in Spain.
Wow!
And it's not available in English at all.
Wild. Hold on, let me show you this book when we're talking about Frank Miller's style.
And one thing that I was there's this guy I follow on Instagram. He calls himself Classic X-Men. He just posts pages from X-Men from back in the day. But the guy must be from Spain, because he mentioned that not only Pacheco but also Salvador Larroca and Juanjo Garnido were creating these original covers. Now, Pacheco and Larroca, we know them because they worked for Marvel. But Guarnido, it's kind of weird to see Guarnido's name associated with doing Marvel covers, because he's better known for his work in Black Sad.
Huh.
So.
Oh, okay.
So him doing superheroes, I didn't know that, so it was kind of surprising to me.
By the way, that Frank Miller style, that this is the guy he was looking at. Yeah. And he made, no bone. He told you, if you read like Frank Miller interviews back in the day, he was looking at Japanese woodcuts. And this guy, Tsukioka Yoshitoshi, 1839 to 1892, is the guy who was. Let me see if I can get this big. I mean, it's the exact style down to the way his pen strokes ended. Whoops, this guy right here. And it's just, once you see this guy, you're like, oh, Frank Miller. Like that, he didn't pretend he didn't, but it's like this is where he got that whole new Lone Wolf and Cub style from. Is this one particular...
I don't know if Miller was going straight to the source. He was definitely a fan of Lone Wolf. And he even
that's how I know this guy's name. He went right to the source. He told you.
Right. Because he lifted some Goseki Kojima artwork from Lone Wolf to there's one scene in Ronin where the guy stabs himself just to get to the robot behind him.
The reason I'm laughing is because Rob Liefeld
did the same with
that.
It is kind of weird finding out who artists, when they discover their new style and just start drawing at that. At least with Frank Miller, he says where he got it from. Other artists won't even mention it, and sometimes you don't run into those other artists because they'll find an artist overseas and just redo that art style, and you think they came up with something new, and it turns out no, they're just borrowing that style from somewhere else. I won't go far as saying stealing, but it's like their art style changed from night and day, and it's kind of when I found that out, especially like some artists that I really liked, to find out later, it's like, oh, this is the same art style as this. I wasn't even aware that they're using it. Now I can't really say that they stole it because I never found them crediting the other artist.
Mm-hmm.
So at least with Jared talking about Frank Miller, he heard he credited him. So it's like, I don't know if all the other artists have said that. That's like Barry Windsor Smith's art style. It's from a French artist. I couldn't even tell you his name because I don't know his name, but I discovered it years later. It's like, oh, he's just using someone else's style. And it's like, well, and then you go back and it's like, well, he was doing the Kirby style for a while. And then, do all artists do that? I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's like I feel guilty every time I draw something and it looks a bit Ramita Senior because it's like but that's who I love art wise.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of those things where it's like, is there a true original style or are they all just from somebody else?
This is the latest comic shop news, which baffled me. This is Kitsune. This guy is takes place in ancient, samurai era Japan, where this guy is a ronin returning to his homeland after years. And it says, Kitsune is a very brutal series, which is out of the ordinary for an anthropomorphic book. Does juxtaposition of animal characters with harsh world brutality and mayhem add something creatively? And he goes through his influences. And what's the first thing I, of course, think of, or most people think of when they see this?
I'm looking at that and I'm thinking that's Master Splinter in the Shadows. Maybe a younger version of him.
Usagi Yojimbo, too.
Yeah, completely.
Feudal Japan. And he goes through to mention his influence, and he mentions Black Sod, Disney's Robin Hood. He mentions Quentin Tarantino, Takashi Kitano films. And I'm like, how could this guy not be influenced by Usagi Yojimbo? Like, how can you make a anthropomorphic animal story about ancient samurai, a ronin in samurai era Japan, and not know Usagi Yojimbo exists?
Well, the kitsune is a popular folklore creature.
Yeah,
it's sort of a trickster speaking fox.
So he's tricking us.
Yeah. Okay. So Jerry Bales has a name here, which he lists as an influence for Barry Windsor Smith, called Alphonse Mucha. And
he influenced everyone, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's specifically.
Yeah, but
I don't know if that's the guy.
Okay.
Wilson
so Alphonse Mucha has a Wikipedia entry. A Czech painter, illustrator, and graphic artist living in Paris during the Art Nouveau period. Best known for his distinctly stylized and decorative theatrical posters, particularly those of Sarah Bernhardt. Born 1860, died 1939.
Well, he was highly influenced. Yeah.
If you're an illustrator, you know Mucha.
Yeah.
I mean, he's no minor character off in the shadows.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Hughes, a huge influence on Hughes.
Yeah, but
Joe Quesada was doing the Art Nouveau stuff for a long time.
Yeah, it's that bold black outline or dark outline around. Images that it's.
Floral
I love that. I love that look.
All in intricate floral pattern. That's all Mucha.
It's. I mean, I have I'm a huge Adam Hughes fan. A lot of people are. So on my shelf behind me, I have like that Cover Run book he did. Like, and
I have that one too. That was good.
Right. In the intro, like he cites like Mucha, but then he has like Drew Struzan and Dave Stevens and Olivia and that. So, everyone and Kevin Nolan, everyone he rattles off like, all right, I can see this here, this there, but Wilson answered your question. I can see him use all his influences in his work, but then it's still distinctly Adam Hughes. So it's like, to me, it's like you take a little this, little that, you put it all together, and you bring whatever you bring to it yourself. So you think of is anyone original Alphonse Mucha, like who preceded him? Was there anyone who looked like him before that, or did he just at some point?
I think there were other Art Nouveau guys.
Yeah.
He's just the most famous.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were probably people who looked like, because Art Nouveau was a whole movement.
Yeah. I mean, there's another guy, I think is Hegre, Hegre, which I think was contemporaries or just after Mucha. And I actually think his stuff is a bit superior. Yeah. So I'm saying he took his stuff and,
Yeah, Mucha's the famous one.
Yeah, I love his stuff. I think it's great. It's beautiful.
Keith Giffen was notorious for lifting European artists without citing his sources. Oh, yeah. The Comics Journal used to love to run articles showing the original European page and Keith Giffen's next to it.
Right.
Thank you for showing those unique covers, Paulo. Yeah. Pacheco's Avengers Forever was probably my favorite work. That's the one where I first noticed him and said, "Wow, this is good stuff."
When was that? Late 90s or something?
Yeah, late 90s.
That's probably why I never seen it. It was like just that.
That Avengers Forever was the last Marvel comic made specifically to address continuity problems.
Wow. In fact,
and it's something that as much as writers will tell you, I just write what I wanted, I don't care about continuity. There is even if they're not doing it on purpose, I think that everybody was writing for Marvel in the 80s and 90s. They kind of went along with the notion that they were all contributing to this great project that was the Marvel Universe.
Right.
So even if they said, I don't read everything, I want to do my own stuff, unconsciously there was some attempt at making sure that everything fit together.
Right. Joe Quesada changed all that.
Yeah. And of course, Mark Gruenwald was obsessed with it. Mark Gruenwald would plot, even if he wasn't writing, if he was just the editor. Right. He would plot the story to make sure that...
And he was so obsessed with continuity to the point where it's like, even before he worked at Marvel, he was doing his own books, similar to like the Frank Miller's, not Frank Miller, I'm sorry, the Steranko books. But he was doing continuity across the board of all genres. So for the life of me, I don't remember the name of the book, but he put out at least a handful of magazines that were just about putting together continuity. And he even had one that he didn't even finish publishing. But that was one of those things. Omniverse?
Yeah, it was his fanzine.
Yeah. So it's like, there were people out there at that time who were so strict about continuity that was like, once he was gone, that was pretty much it. And the continuity editor wasn't gone, wasn't there too long afterwards. He was part of the major layoffs.
I have to show. I've shown this before, I think, on this channel, but never, I think, to Darren and Wilson. This is the Avengers Forever, the original graphic novel trade paperback that came out, I think, in 2000. And I always use this as an example of trapping.
Okay.
Because for some reason, I don't remember the reason, Marvel lost the color files to Avengers Forever. This is probably 1999, 2000. So when they were going to put this out, they had to go back to the colorer to get the colorer files. But for some reason, he only had the untrapped files.
What's trapping?
Trapping is when you've got your black line, and then you slide the color underneath it.
So it's that like basically digital version of Blue Line.
No. It's to stop exactly this. Let me show you. Let's see if you can see this black horse?
Mm-hmm.
See how there's a white line around the black lines? There's not supposed to be. What happened was the black plate slipped a little bit.
It's a registration issue?
It's a registration issue.
Okay.
Trapping is if something misregistered, you don't get a white line.
Okay.
This whole thing was printed without trapping on it. So as you go through it, especially, I remember talking about this before in this channel, and somebody was like, I just thought that was the style. I thought that was on purpose. I was like, no, they didn't. There wasn't supposed to be a white line around so much stuff, and it doesn't happen all the time. Just on sometimes on some pages.
And digitally, what happened? What happened? Just something nudged over like a couple of pixels, or
no,
something?
it's on the printing press itself.
Oh, okay.
The printing
press, the black plate
shifts over a millimeter. Mm-hmm. So you get a white line because that's the white of the paper. There's no ink there. There's no ink indicated to be there, which is why you have to indicate. You have to slide that color underneath the black line. So in case the black line shifts, there's still ink.
But if you make me large, I could show you a plate. What we have here is an Alpha Flight issue. Mm-hmm. This is the 2-page spread that used to have like the information, what was going on in the book. Right. So this is the black plate. So when the black plate is off, wherever it was black, it would be there gray underneath, and that would be the trapping. And the trapping was made by various colors. So this is the blue plate. Here's the red plate. And the yellow plate,
right?
They're stuck together because this thing's old.
And somewhere in the gutters there's like those little targets for the registration, right? Where they all
right. Yeah. So you would have the registration marks. You can't see it because it's under the tape.
Mm-hmm. You can barely. I could see it a little bit, yeah.
So, and it was trapped because if one of the plates shift a little bit, there'll be something underneath it. But in that case, there was nothing underneath the black, which is usually a type of gray.
Well, no, it's not. That's the underprinting.
Right.
The trapping is when you slide the color up to the underprinting.
Right.
Because the underprinting is actually color. That's on the underprinting is actually underprinting is there's something called a black and a rich black. A black is just 100% black. A rich black is 100% black plus color.
Plus another color, yeah.
To make it even darker.
Yeah. Which is like, I remember learning that, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I was like, what? There's something darker than black, but it's a rich black. Yeah.
But the hardcover, we're now on the age where software traps stuff. So I have to tell you, it doesn't always do that. I had a hand trap something yesterday. So now this has no trapping problems because now printing in regular CMYK, the printing software and press automatically traps things unless you're doing something that I was, working on today for Bad Idea where I had to hand trap. So it's like, I always like tell people, it's like, they say you don't have to trap anymore, but you do.
How do you hand trap? You mean physically, the actual?
I had to, I was working on a cover. Mm-hmm. Just doing the basic production on it. The colorist colored it in RGB. Mm-hmm. Things get printed in CMYK. Mm-hmm. RGB has a larger color range than CMYK. Yeah. And he printed it with a blue and a pink that are way outside. The CMYK can't print. So I converted it over and I told, the editors, I was like, listen, he colored this in RGB. You're not going to get this pink and blue, which gave them the idea to make them spot colors. Now, what a spot color is, they're usually like Pantone is one of the biggest brand of spot color. A spot color is a color outside of CMYK.
It's an extra expense.
And outside of the CMYK printing press. So to print a spot color, you run it through CMYK, and then you bring it to another printing press and run it through the spot color. So it's like, that's why they also call it a fifth color sometimes. Yeah. They wanted a fifth and sixth color. The problem was this, usually when you do a spot color, you do it like here. This Great Gatsby logo, that's a spot color. That's a special foil ink.
The first time I ever heard of fifth ink spot cover was The Killing Joke, the acid green logo on the which is embossed also. That's the first time I heard that term.
But if you notice, this is typed. There's a hard edge everywhere. It's not the illustration.
Right.
the way they wanted to do it, they wanted to do this cover, which has the artist's style was to put 1,000 tiny little lines in this. And then, so it was 1,000 tiny little lines of a close up of a guy's face getting hit by an axe,
right,
and going into his face, and the guy and the axe were blue, and the blood all coming out of his face was pink. So we were going to put spot colors. There's only 2 colors on the cover to begin with. We were going to make them spot colors. The problem was you have to indicate exactly where the spot colors go. And the edge of the spot color was all intertwined. Someplace there was a black line, someplace there wasn't. It was just 2 colors meeting color.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way that spot color really isn't used. So we had to check with the printer. And I'm like, the printer says they can do it. Okay. How do you? And I ended up having to talk to the printer, and it was just what I didn't want to do. I had to do. I had to go into the Photoshop document and make sure that the edge, which was intricate because it was all splashes of blood going in this guy's face and 1,000 tiny little black lines, I had to make sure that the edge of one spot color butted directly up the edge of another spot color. No white line, a little bit of overlap in places. If there was no black line, no white showing through at all. So I had to take a brush, a digital brush, and draw along the entire edge. It was like drawing. It was like drawing the edges of a topographic map.
Yeah,
there's so many lines. So that's that's how I had to trap. So now it's considered trapped when all of that spot color is underneath the black line. There's no white showing through, and all the place where there's no black line, where spot color meets spot color, overlaps by like a pixel or 2. So it was a really intricate little job.
It was very, very.
That I was trying to avoid.
And also, obviously, it's an extra expense for the printer too. So, but they just, I guess, said, we want this aesthetic. We want this look.
Like, we want to try this. I was like, all right. Look, Chris Gerusso's here with us.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys.
Hey, man.
Welcome, We're just talking trapping and spot color. You missed all the excitement. But this is the Avengers Forever that's trapped properly thanks to modern software.
Coincidentally, today on Kayfabe, they did a little, kind of run through how blue line coloring works. And it reminded me back in like my intern days, like 93, 94. That was when, Jared, was it Speed Graphics? Was that the place that you printed a lot of the stuff? I'm just trying to think of Speed Graphics or something else, but
they printed a lot of things for us. Yes.
Yeah. So they would do like the blue line stuff, and what happened was so there's blue lines. There's the board with the blue lines on it, then there's the acetate overlay with the black lines on it, right?
Look, Chris has Officer Clawsome out, Lobster Cop, Advanced Readers Edition.
Move it back a bit so we can see the rest of the color.
This is evidence that your automatic trapping software does not work. These pages are not trapped.
No? Oh, wow. I just had a hand trap something today.
Didn't work.
Well, that's annoying.
But I remember in 94, there was so you have the boards, the board they kind of thick Bristol, kind of like art boards, and then with the acetate overlay, right? So do you remember Jimmy DeSimone? Worked in marketing and promotion.
I remember that name. I don't.
Yeah, he was an art director, and I remember he had to talk to them because the acetate overlay wasn't registering with the board, and so he's like, I don't know. I remember him saying to the guys, I don't know if the boards are warping somehow, but they're. Something's getting thrown off. So then they had to this is, just pre-digital. So they were taking the acetate overlay and they were cutting it apart with X-Acto knives and piecing it back together. It was ridiculous. Having to try to make this fix. But I don't know why that was happening. But the first time I ever saw that stuff was at a convention. I'd never laid eyes on stuff before. This is late 80s, the guy who I loved, who airbrushed over the Zack Punisher covers, Phil Zimmelman. He was doing the cover on the interiors on that Big Nothing, Punisher Big Nothing graphic novel. and those were the blue line colors. So you had some examples at a convention.
For those who don't know what blue line cover is, it's actually blue line color. I can speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually hand painted color, but underneath the mechanically made black line. So it's like usually when you do, in those days, especially when you did color, you had to make color separations, which was a bunch of people. You'd make color guides first, which was Wilson painting with Dr. Martin's dyes over a photocopy of the comic. That hand painted comic would go to the people who made the color separations. They'd cut out little pieces of color and put them on a piece of plastic paper, and that's where the color came from. With blue line color, you got the black line on acetate, and they'd paint on the paper. It would be an actual painting, and then they'd lay the black line over it to make sure everything lined up, and then they shoot a photograph basically of that hand painting and make separations from that. It was a more expensive process.
Right, and a good example would be like Lynn Varley coloring Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
And or actually all those Lone Wolf and Cub covers, right? So so that was all blue line. But in I don't know when it got really prevalent, but during my intern days, like in the early mid '90s, they were doing a lot of blue line coloring because it was just pre-digital. And I remember there was so it was a lot of airbrush guys, and
it was like the Epic line did a lot of blue line covering, I think.
Yeah,
they did a lot, maybe the Marvel swimsuit issues, stuff like that. But there was this one airbrush colorist they loved. His name was Sean Tiffany. The only reason I remember it is he had a very distinctive ST signature, and I remember him coloring a lot of the Marvel swimsuit stuff. And then a lot of promotional stuff because I worked in the marketing promo department, right? So I saw his stuff a lot.
Right.
But I gave it a couple of shots in my early days of airbrushing. I did a couple of things that were just promotion, but like I wasn't very good at the time. I would like another shot. I could do a lot better now, but yeah.
Only we could get more than one shot at things.
Cutting all that frisket, man. That's the tedious part of it.
Right.
Yeah,
Chris,
I only did a few airbrush stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, Tit Goblin wants to know if your book is out. I need some claw, left claw north, right claw south.
It comes out in January. This is actually an advanced reader copy. So this, like, for example, the back cover is going to be different. Like this is an early version of the back cover, and then they wanted to change. So, and there's a couple design changes they made and stuff. So I did send them a set of updated files where I did turn in trapped files. So we'll see if there's a difference.
So you didn't trap them to begin with?
These ones they just had all the layered files, and I hadn't done any. Yeah, I mean this proves you do have to, because I sent them layered files that didn't have any
Right. That's funny. I also by the way, I saw advanced readers copy. Since it was a kid book, I was like, in my head, I went, does that mean the kids are supposed to be advanced reader? I thought it was like, for advanced readers.
I never interpreted it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But another technical thing, you've heard me complain before on this show and on my comic book poll list videos about books being oversaturated. That's when you look at a comic and it's wavy.
Right. The paper's too thin to support all the ink that's being...
Yeah, there's too much ink saturation for the thinness of the paper. And one of the reasons for that is that Photoshop's default black is 300% ink. That means that all the CMYK numbers, I think it's like 90% black, 70% red, magenta, 70%, whatever it is, adds up to 300. Which that does that because, like, the United States printing standard or whatever says 300% is your highest saturation. But with comics, it's not. It's obviously not. And it's like we always went with 60, 40, 40, 100, 240%. was always our highest ink saturation, which I think is a good idea. Because then you wouldn't get, but it's like the guidelines we got from the printer. I think I got them from Bad Idea a while ago, and I got them from other places. Said 300% is your maximum ink saturation. I'm always like, So, due to doing this spot color trapping thing, I had to actually talk to the guy at the printer who's going to be doing the job, just so I could make the colors exactly how he wants them. And he even said to me, he's like, he's like in the black, and then put under it 60, 40, 40. I'm like, even the printer says don't go to 300% ink. I'm like, why does nobody listen to the printer?
What does 300% mean? Like, just like
it means CMYK.
Yeah.
100% cyan, 100% magenta, 100% yellow, 100% black would be 400%.
Got it. Okay.
That so any percentage,
it's a super rich black.
Right, that would be 400% black would be the darkest black you could print.
Right,
400%. But you'd have to have like I remember my friend Seth, who was art director at Tor Books for many years, said that their ink limit was always like 340% for the cover of their books. But that's really good paper they're doing their covers on. Not comic book paper.
Well, I saw NMP was talking about, so the Copic markers, like they're grayscale, like cools and warms, and there's black, but then there's like an increment or two above that. There's like special black. There's like
I have a special black marker over here. It just seems like a little more of a matte black to me.
I see.
But yeah, it's like that when you look at a comic and it looks wavy, that's because there's too much ink.
I mean, that's in the last 5-10 years, probably longer. People talked about, especially Marvel, that the paper has gotten so thin. It's still coated paper, but it's so thin that I mean, that reminded me of like newsprint versus. And I think we talked about this newsprint versus glossy paper when you're preparing files of something that originally was a newsprint. And now it's being printed like in a trade, with like coated paper, that the color saturation, you have to dial it down to make it more, because the newsprint kind of diluted the ink a bit, right? It made gave it a little more of a.
It was, and also, people see old comics as more yellow, but they weren't like that when they were new.
Right. It's just no one stored them. Yeah.
Advanced reader, can a dummy like me read and understand the lobster book? Their special Spinal Tap marker goes to 11.
That's you just said that, right? Jared, you just spoke about not understanding what that meant before. That's a joke, right? Okay.
Yeah. That's a joke.
No, we translated it all to English, so you don't need to understand lobster.
Translate. And speaking of, I got the new Gatsby fifth color. I got the new Gatsby book last week, and this is the cost $1 more special ink version. And I guess my comic shop owner slipped it into my pull list, because I didn't actually pre-order one of these, and I saw it and I was like, you know what, I'll get it. He's like, because I'm all hooked on Gatsby these days. But one of the disappointing things about this is, see that drawing right there? That's just a page from the interior. It's like they didn't even draw a new cover for it. They just used an interior page. I'm like, you could have drawn a new cover. But they've been doing that the whole book. There's only one alternate cover with the foil inks, and it uses a panel from inside. Coelho? Is that his name, Paula? Coelho. George Coelho. and Ted Adams is adapting it.
Putting words in the mouth of the original writer.
Now, he's using all the original writer's words, so that's good.
So did Gatsby just go into the public domain like within the last few years? That's why there's so many.
That's why there's Gatsby stuff.
When did it actually hit public domain?
2 years ago, 2020 maybe.
And people knew that was coming, and so there's no. I'm trying to think of. This comes up a lot with some golden age heroes, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm making like Green Llama, and trying to think of the ones that. Remember, I think Dynamite did a book with all those characters, like Black Terror and all that.
Some stuff goes into the public domain because nobody renews the copyright.
Right.
Some stuff goes into the public domain because enough time has passed. Like Great Gatsby is in the public domain now because enough time has passed so that everything from like 1924, I think was the year, 24, 25, became public domain. That's different than like the Green Llama, which whoever owned it went out of business, didn't care anymore. We're doing a completely different job. Never renewed the copyright / trademark on it. So after like a much shorter period,
the copyright,
the copyright.
Mm-hmm.
After a much shorter period of time passes, than that. Matter of fact, one of the saddest stories I read was in where is it? From Shadow to Light, the Mort Meskin story. They were talking about Carl Burgos, the creator of the original Human Torch. And also, after, I think it was like maybe 12 or 16 years, if you didn't renew the trademark copyright on it, it reverted back to whoever created it or something like that. I forget the exact law. But if you remember, I think it was in Fantastic Four Annual #1. They had an appearance by the original Human Torch. I think the story was like somebody went into a cave and found the original Human Torch and he caught on fire. Carl Burgos was just about to reclaim the trademark copyright on the original Human Torch. That's why Marvel published that issue. Just so he couldn't get it back. And he was just like heartbroken when that happened because he was, ticking off the time until he could get it back. And oh well, they published that issue just so he couldn't get it back.
What year was that? That was in the.
That was in the early mid-60s. I can't remember. It was an early Fantastic Four annual that the original Human Torch appeared in.
I think it was Giant Size #4.
Giant Size #4?
It was in 74 or 75.
No, it was earlier than that, I think.
No.
I may have my years off then.
The original Human Torch returns around that time.
Okay. Whatever year it returned, that was when it was the copyright was about to run out.
But they had been reprinting Human Torch stories ever since they had started the reprint titles, Marvel Superheroes and.
So it must have been before that. They only found him in a cave. It was like only a couple of page appearance, I think. He wasn't even part of the story. Really?
Okay, because in the Giant Size, it was definitely part of the story. The whole point was that he was getting in a fight with Johnny Storm.
Yeah, so I think it must have been right because I have to check the book and find the part again. I'll do that later. And Kevin O'Neill died this week too. He of Martial Law and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That's when I first saw it. Martial Law. I was like,
yeah, me.
Yeah.
No, I may have seen Nemesis before. I think I had one issue of Nemesis when Eagle Comics put it out, but I don't think I really knew who he was until Martial Law.
That stuff was definitely rated R.
Oh, that was good. I enjoyed that stuff.
Yeah.
But it was like, when he came over and did martial law, I was like, oh, he's one of the 2000 AD guys. So I knew who he was conceptually, but I never saw much 2000 AD.
I really liked martial law, like kind of.
I liked it a lot.
Little stuff you wrote, stuff you wrote like on graffiti and
fear and loathing.
That's great.
Now this urban legend started that said that his entire style was banned by the comics code.
I just saw that somebody said that was true. It was for an issue of something or whatever. The comics code just objected to the whole issue.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was now.
There was some guys in the comic book historians, and they were trying to analyze the way that the story would have been stopped by the comics code, and that was not the first time that Kevin O'Neill did something for DC, that Green Lantern story.
Yeah, I don't know. I read the details of it on Facebook like this week, but I don't remember them. It really wasn't that interesting. It was all kind of like vague and general, and it got printed. So,
because that that Green Lantern story was the one that Jeff Johns stole everything to do his Green Lantern run, and there were some weird things there that you normally would not expect from a Green Lantern story. So yeah, I can see the. And there's too much of it because it's Kevin O'Neill. So they probably have to demand that the entire story be redrawn in order to publish it as a newsstand comic. Because I think it was those backup stories that appeared in Green Lantern, Tales of the Green Lantern Corps, but they put it out in the annual, and the annual may not have been distributed in the newsstand, so it was okay there.
I used to love to watch Don Daly deal with the comics code. Because he was the Punisher editor, and he'd be like, okay, because like one of the things you weren't allowed to have was exit wounds. No exit wounds allowed. So he'd put an exit wound in on purpose so he could get other things passed. And he'd be like, all right, let's see if we can do this and this and get this and this out of them. Let's put in 2 exit wounds and see if we can get 3 entrance wounds out of them. So he'd put stuff in there.
I've definitely heard that tactic with directors of radar, movies, where they try to go overboard just to so then they can get the rate. They get down to what they actually wanted to begin with.
I got to see Don Daly do it live a couple of times. It was pretty amusing. Let's see if we can get this past them if we do this and this.
That's amazing. Good old comics code.
Radiant Black number... What is this? 19, new story arc. I think this starts volume 4. So if you want to jump on Radiant Black, this is the supermassive superhero universe. And it's a good, solid comic, though. I keep forgetting these guys are in their 30s. Because they look like teenagers. They've all got Yu-Gi-Oh! Spiky hair. And the 2 guys who were Radiant Black over the course of this series are now sharing the power. So it's been an interesting superhero series. A solid read with Paulo's cousin Marcelo Costa on the art. And who's writing it? Kyle Higgins. Kyle Higgins writing it. Carlos Eduardo inking it, and Becca Carey lettering it. Good stuff. I'm thirsty. Let's see what other. Dark Ride. This is by the Birthright guys. Joshua Williamson, Andre Bresson, colorist Adriana Lucas, Pat Brousseau, the letterer. The lettering actually caught my eye in this. Pat Brousseau's lettering actually caught my eye in this because he's using a font that makes it look very hand-lettered. I don't think this is his usual font because I read his stuff on their last series, and I read his stuff on what was the other one? Manifest Destiny. So I think this is a new font, and also I just noticed the balloons look hand lettered too. He's using balloons that are not ellipses and they're not solid stroked lines around it.
On his Facebook post, he usually talks about trying to make lettering look like it was hand lettered the best he can while he's still using the computer.
He did a nice job on the aesthetic of this lettering, I have to say. I enjoyed it. Welcome to hell. Well, this is a story about a horror amusement park that was made by a deal with the devil. I don't know if the ultimate point of it is, but so far it's been a horror story. Much like Love Ever It's funny how sometimes it's like, I don't know where the story... It's just kind of about them. The father started the amusement park, but he's kind of out of the picture now. Now we've got the son and the daughter who don't quite get along running the amusement. Or the daughter is off being a social media influencer. She just came back to the amusement park. Son's trying to run the amusement park. Meanwhile, it's this haunted... There's actually like supernatural things happening at this amusement park. So it's a really strange story. It's one of those I'm like, I don't really know what the plot is.
Yeah.
But it's good stuff. What are you working on tonight, Chris?
Commission.
More commissions? Sketch covers?
Yeah.
No, he's Mr. Sketch
those
Cover.
Things, those sketch covers are just kind of sitting there.
You haven't sold them or you haven't shipped them?
I haven't sold. I sold one.
All right, we got to get Chris some. We got to have one of those telethons where we sell some Chris sketch covers, along with Scott Koblish art. That reminds me, I have to contact him because his stuff is going up for auction at Heritage Auction in a couple of weeks.
Chris, is it pencil? Is it Copic marker? Is it ink?
It's it'll be pencil and ink, or pen and ink. Ink. Mm-hmm. It'll be inked. I'm penciling it now, and then I'm going to ink it.
I couldn't. It was that blue pencil at first. I couldn't tell.
I think you should ink it first and then pencil it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that saved me a lot of time.
Then I got another issue of Spawn. Boy, this book comes out regularly. Still only $2.99, so I'm still buying it.
What number is up? It's well over 300.
335. It's at. I started buying it around 315, so I've got 20 issues of it now.
So that was a big deal, right? He surpassed Cerebus as a.
Yeah. He still calls it I think the record-breaking Spawn. I think is now its official title.
Listen, I gotta respect it.
Me too. Like I said, I don't think it's the same thing as Cerebus, but this comic only exists because one person wants it to exist. Right. Todd McFarlane.
Yeah.
He's not even doing it anymore. This is now Roy McConville and Carlo Barberi, which is actually fine with me. But this comic, most other comic book creators would have abandoned their creation, their million-selling creation, when it was selling 5,000 copies.
Yeah.
They would have abandoned it. He did not. He kept it going, and he made it bigger. I mean, I don't know what it's selling now, but a year ago it was selling 100,000 copies.
And That's very healthy numbers for current state of the industry. Yeah.
Spawn 300 really put it back on the map and brought a whole lot of Spawn fans back. I'm not sure how real that number is, though, because he also made Spawn returnable. I don't know if it's still returnable, but for a while it was returnable.
Well, there's all kinds of ways
to
fudge the numbers. Yeah,
but still, that's an incredible number to get Spawn. After like I said, there was for a time it was selling between like 5,000 and 10,000 copies.
There was. This is not when I was at Marvel, but it was sometime thereafter where Marvel were able to inflate their numbers, and I forget what it was, because it was being distributed in this specific issue. I can't remember what it was in Loot Crate. You know what Loot Crate is?
Oh yes, that was. It's amazing they went bankrupt. Loot Crate. They were like huge for a while.
Oh, did they? Made that whole. You know what? Not maybe 5 years ago, I interviewed with for like an e-com job at not Loot Crate, but one of the competing kind of like subscription like box model that I'm not even sure if they're around either. So maybe that kind of model just didn't work out, or maybe it was just a Loot Crate. I'm not sure.
I can't remember why. You could read it. I read their wiki page once because like it was like a year or two ago. I was like, whatever happened to Loot Crate? So I looked it up and read their wiki page. It was like, because they were on top of the world. It was amazing.
I don't know, but maybe they just couldn't figure out a way to get into the black, though. Maybe.
Yeah, there's some reason for it, but I can't remember.
Yeah, it's like
Comics Unlimited. How you doing tonight? Found out Batman died from you guys tonight. Yeah, that's a shocker. His voice is the Batman in my head when I read the books. Yeah, a lot of people, he's their Batman. I never really watched Batman the Animated Series, so I don't really know his voice, but a couple of generations sure do.
Did you have Comic Scene? Did you have Comic Scene magazine back in the day?
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, same people made Fangoria. I mean, there were two different runs of it, but like I remember had like I would buy it regularly, like late 80s, early 90s. But they had I remember an issue probably 90 or 91. So this is after the first Michael Keaton Batman movie, but before the second. And there was this little preview of Batman the Animated Series, and so it's cool, like like that aesthetic that they have, like that airbrush on black background look, very Art Deco looking. And I was like, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders at the time because I was just like, okay, fine, another Batman series. But it did look very different, and it was not just the animated series. He did the voice for so many of the Arkham Asylum games, right, and all that stuff. So that was had a nice little career there. I didn't know for a long time that was maybe the first 5-10 years that like Mark Hamill was the Joker's voice until like everyone knew it.
Yeah, I remember Comic Scene from the early 80s, so I must have known it in its first incarnation.
Yeah, and then they brought it back. I guess there was maybe at first it didn't get a lot of traction, but then when the comic market started really lifting.
Yeah, I don't remember it being around long. But I remember, I liked it, of course.
Yeah, their offices were down the street from Marvel's. Because I remember having to go to their offices because my first job at Marvel was doing conventions and promotions. So press releases and stuff like that. And because they were local, I was, again, being an intern, one of the jobs was to send files over to them so they could print something. Because, again, it's a monthly magazine and it was just quicker to walk it over than to send it through mail. Right. This is, before the age of internet. The internet was around. We just wasn't using it yet. That's what it really came down
to. And my last comic of the week is Liam Sharp continues his weirdness with Star End.
What was the weirdness? A style change, or because I know I've seen him hawking in this book.
I don't really know his work, but it's a painted style rather than his line art.
Yeah,
and I know a lot of people who are fans of his line art don't like the painted style, but the weirdness is really kind of the storytelling technique, which I enjoy. The thing it reminds me most of is J.M. Matisse and John J. Muth's Moonshadow. Not in its content. The stories are completely different,
right?
But the story there's sort of an off-camera narrator that's telling you the story in a little bit of hindsight sometimes. But the story is It starts off way, way, way in the future, where there are these human beings exist, but so do these sort of robot digital beings. And the digital beings are trying to wipe out the humans. And one of the only ways humans can fight, and they're fighting in these, weird conceptual digital spaces too, as well as real physical spaces. And one of the things human beings can use against them is magic. But human beings are losing the war. So somehow the leader queen of this future age sends her son back in time to the age of King Arthur to be Merlin and somehow revive even more magic so that they can win the war in the future. But meanwhile, there's all this Arthurian stuff going on too, because he's meeting what was King Arthur's father's name? Uthor. He's meeting Uthor. Then he's meeting King Arthur, and stuff's going on, and there's like stuff, and it's just. Meanwhile, there's also, haha, robot. Is this your card? Magic to beat the robot. Meanwhile, there's also a flash forward from the Arthur age and a flashback of these two characters who are kind of narrating the story who are in our day and age. I'm not sure what they have to do with the story. And there's a lot of like blocks of text and images next to each other rather than straightforward comics. Now, here's some straightforward comics page, but that's like King Arthur talking to Merlin, about a boar and a bear or something. So there's just a lot of stuff going, a big battle scene, a big obscure but painted battle scene with dialogue or caption boxes going across it. So it is not your normal comic.
Do you think it's has potential to be like a Netflix series kind of thing?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know if a Netflix executive could understand this.
Right.
I don't know if they'd get it.
Hey, good for him though. In terms,
I like it. It like I said, it reminds me the most of Moonshadow. That sort of obscure, out there thing.
Right. Hey, listen, if good for anyone who wants to kind of like expand their try different style.
Like I said, being an indie guy, I've never really bought anything by Liam Sharp before.
He was on Wonder Woman for a bit.
He's a Green Lantern guy too, right?
I think so. I think he started. He was a. Did he draw Death's Head originally? Was he a Death's Head artist for Marvel UK?
Death's Head 2.
Yeah.
Death's Head 2.
Yeah. And then he came over and he did Hulk posts Gary Frank, when they made him more like kind of savage again. And then I don't know his whole trajectory, but like I know like 5 years ago maybe he was on.
I know he's been around for a while.
Yeah.
For 2.5 years, he was drawing something for Vertigo called Testament.
Oh, yes.
Which was something that was happening at the same time in two different time periods. And one of those was Inside the Bible.
I think I may even, I don't know if I just gave those away or I just saw them. But I had those for years. Someone gave them to me and I never kind of read them. Because I've never been I've always kind of been averse to Vertigo.
The story was kind of strange. I was expecting something different, but I couldn't tell you what I was expecting. So,
I just realized they finally explained the name, the dragon and the boar, in this issue. Because King Arthur tells Merlin about his dream, where he was a dragon fighting a bear, and Merlin's like, no, that's not. I saw a dragon facing a great shaggy pelted bear. I knew the bear must be tamed. What you say to that, wizard? Where does this say? What in fact you saw, my lord, was a dragon and a boar, not a bear. Neither were you the dragon. So I guess the title has to do with King Arthur's dream. I still don't know what, but I didn't know what that meant before this very moment. Yeah, I'm not sure how long this is going either. It says book 1, so I assume that it's probably going to go 6 issues, and then if he makes enough money with it, he'll go book 2. Robot, is this your card? Penn and Teller fight robots. I'd buy that comic. Penn and Teller fight robots.
Hey guys, I got it. I'm sorry, I got to drop.
All right.
But thank you as always. And I won't be around for a couple of weeks. You guys have a great Thanksgiving and all that stuff.
Okay, we'll catch you next time you're on.
Take care. Good having you here.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.
Boom. Now that asshole's gone. We haven't said that in ages.
I thought you liked that guy.
No, that tradition goes back to the on-air hangouts we used to have back in the YouTube community in like 2015, 2016. There was this one guy who used to go by the handle Jean Paul Ace Peter. Sean was his name. He used to do it. It was back when, I don't know if you guys remember Google Hangouts. Yeah. It was a thing Google used to do. You could hang out off air with a bunch of people. So GPAP, as we called him, for Jean Paul Ace Peter, used to just like run an on-air hangout all day. An off-air hangout, pardon me. And people would come and go all day. And whenever somebody left, somebody in the rest of the group would go, well, now that asshole's gone. So it just became tradition. We didn't really mean it.
So you think all those guys are assholes?
Quit mocking me.
Assholes.
Quit mocking me with your humorous words. That's a decent Spawn cover, I gotta say. I didn't really look at it. It's eye-catching. Maybe a nice scary Spawn face there with some... Move over here. Not bad.
Now, is the Spawn you're reading, is that Al Simmons Spawn, or is it a different Spawn?
This is Al Simmons Spawn. But there's a billion different Spawns. I don't know exactly what happened, but I think in issue 300, he tried something big, Al Simmons this is, where something to do with killing someone that did something to the multiverse and the something. Anyway, the result of it was 1,000 different Spawns ended up in his sort of universe. So then he was hunting down all these different Spawns. And some of them wanted to take over the universe. Some of them didn't. Yada, yada, yada. And some of the other Spawns have been characters in the book. There's like a Western Spawn who used to be in the Old West and now is in his time. And there were other Spawns who threatened to take over the world. I'm literary rights Spawn. Your asshole saying has gotten me in trouble at a meeting, but I still use it. Oh, yeah, that might get you in trouble at meetings.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, bad.
Oh, man. But I said, like, I couldn't even tell you the exact plot, and like there was just a big reveal at the end of last issue when a big character, we found out who was behind this whole part of the war, trying to get Spawn to help them, was this character named Nyx, Nyx, who's some woman who was dead and now she's not dead. And I was like, I never read anything about her, so I don't know.
I heard that he brought back the countdown. Did that ever go anywhere?
No, there's no countdown in here.
Okay. He used to when one of the selling points of Spawn when it first came out, I remember that was like he was a superhero with a limited power.
Yeah.
So they had a countdown clock of every time he used his power, the clock would be going down. So it was a gimmick he was doing for a while.
It was such a gimmick.
And then it got abandoned.
It was a successful gimmick, though. It was such a successful gimmick that DC launched an ongoing series called Countdown.
They stole it right from Spawn.
They sure did, and so then I think it was an extended court battle. They finally settled it by saying, "Okay, let's just do a crossover. We'll all make a ton of money."
Batman Spawn crossover is coming out soon.
Yeah,
there's a new one coming out. In case you don't know, I think it's coming out in the next couple of months. Even the Batman Spawn crossover.
I gotta say this about the Batman Spawn is that I did like that whatever happened in that book continued on in the Spawn books. Usually when they have major crossovers like that, the event happened only in the book and you don't know anything else about it. At least the literal scars that he got from that book, Spawn, because Batman threw a batarang and sliced him in the face, which was kind of a odd thing for Batman to do. But anyway, it's like, Spawn for a while had that scar from that event, and I thought that was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that is neat.
I do recall reading somewhere that with the return of Al Simmons' Spawn in the Spawn 300, that they were talking about bringing back the countdown. So I was wondering how long that they kept that, or did they drop that right away?
No, I didn't see any countdown and into stuff I read.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, one of my favorite Batman crossovers is Grendel Batman.
Okay.
I thought Grendel's a good character to cross over with superheroes because he's a villain.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have the usual misunderstanding, we fight to a draw stuff. Grendel gets to act like a villain, and he's a pretty good villain.
Right.
So that he tests that.
So what they Batman, have, they start off with an understanding.
They do in that one.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying
I don't even remember. I haven't read it in so long.
We have an understanding. I'm the good guy and you're the bad guy. Let's fight.
Yeah. Yes.
Understood.
Yep. There's no misunderstanding. Hey, you're the bad guy. No, you're the bad guy. We know just who we have to kill here. And I remember liking the Shadow Grendel crossover too. Mm-hmm. That was a good one.
I think I missed that one.
I don't know. It must be 10 years old now.
Mm.
They're just putting out new volumes of the Grendel collected editions too. I think I want to get some of those, even though I have the original comic. Because the collected editions they had before now of Grendel from Dark Horse were 6x9.
They're reprinting the omnibuses, so
the omnibuses are bigger. They're comic size. Those are the ones I'm interested in. Were the omnibuses originally comic? I don't even remember because I thought because Dark Horse published a lot of 6x9 omnibuses, like the Finder omnibuses I have are that size.
I'm not sure.
So I'm not sure, but I think I remember reading that the original, at least the collected editions I've seen of Grendel. I don't even know if they're called omnibuses. Were 6x9. Hey, baby, is there a Mr. Understanding waiting for you at home? Oh, we got lots of comedy tonight.
What I would do, I would I would create a new volume 4 because now they don't need the novels to fill up the space for because it's Grendel Prime.
Right.
And there's the new miniseries set in space with Grendel Prime, so they could use that one.
That new
because you're reading the comic and you start reading the novels and you don't feel like it.
Yeah. That new miniseries set in space ended real weird. It ended with a Trump parody.
That's unnecessary.
The rest of the issues were kind of like Star Trek. He was searching for strange new worlds. And the last strange new world he found was this Trump parody world. And it was just kind of like, huh? I don't mind Trump parody, but this seems like an odd place for it. Do you guys think the Grendel creator can live off that character? It's popular, and I don't know. I think he can live off his back catalog now, but he's got Mage too.
Yeah, but
I don't know
nothing that he ever did was a runaway sales success.
Yeah.
Everything is a cult hit.
Right.
So unless they can convince continuous new readers to try out the stuff, it's gonna have some slight peaks and then it's gonna go down. I mean, I understand why people will have a hard time because Grendel is not consistent. Not in terms of story quality, art quality.
The Matt Wagner stuff is consistent. Everything else you're taking your chances with.
Yeah. I mean, I like the. I like the Grendel's daughter story. The thing is, the art style is not good. The Pender brothers in 1980. Well, I'm not even sure if they ever got better, but that artwork is freaky.
I like that artwork, but it's not mainstream.
It's
artwork,
and it's not polished.
Yeah, it's got its own. It's got sort of a fashion style to it.
It's when Team Sale starts drawing that thing really gets good.
I wonder if he ever got any movie rights money. Maybe somebody optioned it every now and then.
Well, if the thing was already on schedule to become a TV series, they must have paid it.
Got some Netflix money, right? Even though they canceled it.
More than an option because they were producing it.
Right, they cast it.
But if it got into production, that means they may be able to hold on to the rights for a while longer. So it's probably in Wagner's interest to convince the guys to convince Netflix to finally produce the series.
Yeah. Maybe they'll bring it someplace else. Who knows?
The actor was French, I believe, so I'm not sure if there was going to be a good fit.
Yeah, I wonder how well it's like how well you can pull off because he's a villain. How well you can pull off him and because you know how series have they want their lead character to be a hero, so it's kind of like I was wondering how they were going to pull that off and
he's not a gentleman thief.
No, he's a villain.
No, he's a pure out villain, and he doesn't have like a regular hero to fight, if I remember correctly.
Well, he did Argent. Always the thing about Grendel was Grendel, the villain, in his secret identity was a super popular writer. So it was like his secret identity, he was a hero, but he was a villain at night. And the hero who fought him was Argent the Wolf, who was a hero, but people saw as a villain because of his appearance. Because he was this giant wolf. So everybody was like, who smelled even, they always said. So it was like, no, the hero appeared to everybody to be the villain, and the villain appeared to be the hero. That's what was interesting about the dynamic of the Hunter Rose Grendel.
It was well known that Grendel was a criminal.
Yes.
So I suppose the audience might have thought that Grendel was some sort of gentleman thief, but every time they showed somebody who was even mildly associated with organized crime.
Oh yeah, they all knew he was.
They would freak out every time Grendel would appear.
Yeah, they thought of him as the devil. It was like, whoa, I don't want to mess with that guy. All right, well, we should wrap it up for the week. It's our end time already. We've been talking for a while.
Yeah.
Remember last year when remember last year I did that Mike Grell panel, virtual panel. It looks like I'm going to have the chance to do a real one this year.
All right, cool. When?
Yeah, we have a pretty good lineup of comics people for Comic Con Portugal this year.
When is that?
It's in the second weekend of December.
Oh, cool.
And so besides Mike Grell, we're going to have Gene Ha. Kerry Nord.
Oh, cool.
The guy from Deadly Class, what was his name? Wes Craig.
Wes Craig, he's really good. Kerry Nord did some good Conan stuff with Dark Horse.
And we're going to have Paco Roca from Spain. And there's another guy from Spain who works in the U.S. market. I can't remember his name, Joseph something. And Mike Diodoro.
Oh, cool. That sounds like a good lineup. Hope you get to talk to all of them.
Yeah. And Ming Na Wen is going to be
here. The actress.
Yeah.
She's
that thing I don't care about. Last year when I did the virtual panel, I walked around the con, and it's kind of ridiculous. Every panel, nobody knew they were going on because there was no announcement inside the con.
It was not well organized.
Yeah, I don't know. They make money. It's just that people who are into geek culture here, they're not very smart. And everything that was for sale was merchandising. So there wasn't even anything good with games or with video games.
Well,
of course,
COVID
prevented a bunch of most actors from coming. So
okay, that's no fun. Well, good night, all. Have a good night,
everybody.
We'll catch everybody next week. And as the Impossibles say, rally ho!
Rally ho ho!